Order, order. Mr. Speaker.
Present us, O Lord, in all our doings with thy most gracious favor, and further us with thy continued help, that in all our works begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name, and finally, by thy mercy, attain everlasting life. Amen. I would like to introduce one of our pages, Debbie Uaboy. Please welcome Debbie. Introduction of guests. I recognize the Minister of Culture and Sports.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, request leave for extended introduction.
Leave has been requested. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you very much. To you and through you, I'd like to introduce some incredible Saskatchewan athletes, coaches, and staff here at the Legislative Assembly. This summer, 8 Saskatchewan athletes and 3 coaches attended the 2023 Special Olympics World Summer Games in Berlin, Germany. Now, later, my colleague will talk more about their incredible achievements. But I'd like to ask all members to join me in welcoming 6 of these athletes who are able to join us today. We have Aaron Higgs and his parents, Doug and Rose. Mackenzie Miller and her parents, Lee and John, and grandparents, Carol and Harvey. Stephen Salmon, his mother, Nevan Nadib. Taylor Carter and brother, Tyler Carter. Tyler Servant and mother, Kimberly. And track and field star, Vanessa Gelbert. Joining them are coaches Megan Penno, Ben Lozinski, and Jackie Powell. Alongside Egan Amend, the Special Olympics Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, I would ask all members to join me in recognizing these amazing athletes and the coaches who participated in the Games, as well as their family members and staff who supported both them on the field and off the field. Because we know if we didn't have family helping us, it'd be pretty tough. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and continuing to be role models for our province. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Watson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To you and through you and to all members, it's an honour to rise today in this chamber and join with the minister opposite in welcoming this outstanding group of athletes to their Legislative Assembly. I want to welcome each and every one of the athletes, the coaches, and their family members who've taken, I'm sure, a trip. I'm not sure where you all hail from in Saskatchewan, but sometimes coming to Regina, it is a trip. And I want to thank you all for coming here today and joining us. It was a real honor to meet some of you earlier today and shake your hands. And I'm just always in awe when I see someone standing with one of the medals. We had a number of gold medals, silver medals, just such outstanding achievement amongst you all. I have to highlight one conversation that I had, and that was from Taylor, who won a gold medal in golf. And he told me earlier today that his longest drive was 302 yards. And so I just want to just say a huge congratulations. Welcome Aaron, Mackenzie, Stephen, Taylor, Tyler, and Vanessa to your Legislative Assembly.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon-Nutana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request leave for an extended introduction.
Has been requested. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by welcoming Michael Sorowski, seated in the West Gallery. This is the second day that Michael has been in attendance here in the Legislative Assembly, observing the proceedings. Some of my colleagues may recognize Michael, who has been spending time in front of the legislative building, drawing attention to his plight and request for a meeting with the minister. And on our last day in session, I took the time to go and chat with Michael to understand his concerns at the urging of the member for Saskatoon Fairview and her encouragement to all of us members here in the legislature to understand his concerns. And I have to say that I was very moved and saddened by his situation, and the fact that when I asked him about, well, have you spoken to your MLA about this situation, and he replied that he had attempted to request a meeting and that had been denied. And Michael is on the 35th day of a hunger strike, and I'm very worried about his health and overall well-being. So I encourage all members to reach out to Michael to understand his plight, and I want to welcome him here again to his Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while I'm on my feet, I also want to take the time to recognize another individual seated in your gallery here today, my constituency assistant, Carrie Schaefer. Carrie is sort of the glue of our constituency office, a very committed and dedicated individual who serves alongside of me, meeting the needs of our constituency with professionalism, with dedication, and with a caring heart. I can honestly say that I can think of nobody that delivers in this role in such a exemplary way, and I'm so grateful to have her in my office and the work that she does. Carrie is such a rock star that when she delivers on the needs of our constituency, they even bring her flowers because they are just so appreciative of the good work that she does for them. And so that I do ask all members to join me in welcoming Carrie to her Legislative Assembly.
Recognize a member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to be on my feet and join the Minister and the member for Saskatoon-Meewasin in welcoming Aaron McKenzie, Stephen, Taylor, Tyler, and Vanessa to their Legislative Assembly together with their families. As critic for disabilities, we're so proud to have these amazing athletes here in Saskatchewan. My colleague, the member for Douglas Park, and I had the real pleasure, joined by the Minister of Social Services, to attend an event, the Celebration of Champions, back in June. And back then, Aaron, I think, was just about to go off to Berlin, and maybe perhaps others. And I noticed today, just seeing him up there, he can barely keep his back up, Mr. Speaker, from all that weight, all those medals hanging around his neck. So it's truly wonderful to see. So I wanted to join the others in welcoming them to their Legislative Assembly. And while I'm on my feet, there's a new face in your gallery, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome Carly Moore-Butter-Schick, who's seated in your gallery, as I said. She's a proud member of Peepekissis First Nation. She is a social work student at the University of Regina who's doing her practicum placement in my office, and we're just so lucky to have her. She also works in many capacities in her community, but she is a counselor at the Isabel Johnson Domestic Violence Shelter at the YW. She's done some work at my aunt's place. I've barely known Carly a week, but just sitting and talking with her and exploring her interests and her goals for this practicum, she truly feels like a long-time friend. So I really want to welcome her to this Legislative Assembly. I understand she's off to Australia next semester to finish her degree, and I just can't wait to see what she accomplishes.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon Fairview.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask leave for an extended introduction.
Leave has been requested. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to introduce to you and through you in the East Gallery someone who is no stranger to this Assembly, Ms. Twyla Harris Nasiri, and her two children, who it's their first time coming today, Atlas and Ayan. I want to welcome them to their assembly here. Many of you will know that Twyla is my constituency assistant. She's currently on maternity leave. And so we're very happy to have her back in the assembly today. Of course, she's been in the constituency office holding down the fort since 2017 when I was first elected. But I met Twyla about 17 years ago, and our journey has been long and lovely. We worked together in the Canadian Cadet organizations. She was a captain in cadets as well, and spent a lot of time serving youth in that role. She has a youth care worker diploma, and that's when I first met her, was when she was going to school for that. She has years in the community with 4-H, but she also is quite involved with organ donation and organizing the Shoot for the Vitals campaign, archery shoot every year, which I encourage folks to get involved with. In addition to all of these things, she's been quite involved with the Saskatchewan NDP and has filled a number of roles on the executive and with the Saskatchewan New Democrat Women, including being their president. So I want to thank her for all of her contributions, say that we're excited to welcome her back to the constituency office whenever she feels the time is right, and ask everyone to welcome her and her boys to the Assembly today.
Recognize a member from Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you and to you, I'd like to join many members in this assembly to welcome the delegation from the Special Olympics. This is a special one for me. Mr. Speaker, I have known the Higgins family, Rose and Doug and Aaron, for many, many years as I played hockey with the Higgins' other son, Jordan, for many years. And Doug was, of course, a coach of the team, and was blessed to learned many things from him in my short hockey career as a child. But it's great to have Aaron here. Folks will see Aaron on the field at the Saskatchewan Roughriders games, and he's been there for a long time, so it's great to have him here. I also want to say special hello to Taylor Carter, a resident of Regina Walsh Acres, so one of my constituents, and I had the opportunity to meet Taylor on the doorstep during the by-election and got to get a picture with him and that gold medal and talk about his golf wins. So it's great to have him and his brother Tyler here. I'd also like to introduce in the East Gallery, Mr. Speaker, my first class from Regina Walsh Acres to visit here from Elsie Marinock School. These are grade 8 students with their teacher, Miss Rochelle Workman, and parent chaperone Myra Ansari. So it's great to have them here. I was running down to the bathroom right before we started here today and got to have a chat with them in the hall, and not in the bathroom. They were outside of the bathroom. But it was great to meet, and I've met a number of them on the doorstep in Regina Walsh Acres again. So welcome to your assembly, and I will ask all members to join with me in welcoming them. Thank you.
Presenting petitions, I recognize a member from Saskatoon Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise once again to present a petition to the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan calling for improved mental health services for northern and rural Saskatchewan. These citizens are urging us to take note that the rate of suicide among Indigenous people is 3 times higher than that of non-Indigenous people. And that suicide rates of Indigenous people living on reserve are twice as high as those living off reserve. We know about the historical and ongoing impacts of colonization, displacement, and intergenerational trauma that are related to the high suicide rates of Indigenous people. And we know that government needs to play a role, not only in destigmatizing, but in providing supports when they are needed, Mr. Speaker, real supports. I would like to read the prayer. We, in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan call on the Government of Saskatchewan to address and work with vulnerable communities in the north and rural areas, and to provide adequate mental health funding and services for northern and rural Indigenous communities. This is signed by individuals from Saskatoon and Hafford today, Mr. Speaker. I do so present.
Sure. Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honour to rise again and present a petition to the Legislative Assembly calling for adequate funding for education in Saskatchewan. Those who signed this petition today would like to remind us that both the SSBA, who represent all 27 publicly funded public and separate school divisions, as well as teachers in Saskatchewan, put the blame on the problems in education squarely at the feet of this government. Right. They recognize there's been a decade of underfunding. It's important to note that today's failures are the result of that decade of underfunding, reduction in per student funding in Saskatchewan that has led us to near the bottom of the country. It's no doubt, recognizing these failures, that we saw this weekend thousands of people, roughly 2,000, gathered outside of the minister, directly opposite of me, outside of his office on A Street in Saskatoon. They weren't there to celebrate this government's track record. Nope. They were there to put the blame on what's happening today right in front of his office, where it should be seen and known by this government. Mr. Speaker, I'll read the prayer. We in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan call on the Government of Saskatchewan to provide adequate, sustainable and predictable operating funds for our 27 public and separate school divisions to ensure that schools, teachers and other caring professionals are able to meet the needs of every student in Saskatchewan. Today's petition is signed by residents of Martensville and Saskatoon. I do so present.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Meewasin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to rise today during Healthcare Providers Week, which runs October 29th to November 4th, to present this petition calling on the Government of Saskatchewan to fix the rural healthcare staffing crisis. Mr. Speaker, recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals is a particular issue in Saskatchewan's rural healthcare facilities, leading to many emergency rooms, acute, lab and X-ray technician service disruptions. The ongoing pandemic has created burnout and led to early retirements and resignations, which has a rippling effects for small cities and towns. Healthcare workers and their families are valuable assets in Saskatchewan, communities, and local economies. Mr. Speaker, my office has been inundated with requests calling on us as MLAs to solve this crisis. I'll read the prayer. We in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan call on the Government of Saskatchewan to fix the rural healthcare crisis. These undersigned residents live in Swift Current and Delisle. I do so present.
Recognize a member from Regina University.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to be on my feet to again present a petition to the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan calling for the funding of in vitro fertilization treatments here in Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, this past month included Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Week. And unfortunately for so many in this province, and in particular those struggling with fertility, struggling to conceive, this is all too common and entirely consuming a reality for people, Mr. Speaker. We know that fertility treatments are covered by other jurisdictions in Canada. We know they are cripplingly expensive for people, and the struggle for folks out there who are trying to start or grow their families is so emotional, it's so stressful, and there should not be a financial burden added to that, Mr. Speaker. I'll read the prayer. We, in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request that the Government of Saskatchewan immediately move to cover the financial burden of 2 rounds of IVF treatments for Saskatchewan people experiencing infertility. Mr. Speaker, the signatories of this petition today are from North Battleford. I do so present.
Recognize the member from Regina Douglas Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to present a petition calling for the improvement of labour laws in Saskatchewan. Those who signed this petition wish to bring to our attention the following: that even after the October 1st, 2023 increase, Saskatchewan's minimum wage will remain the lowest in Canada at $14 an hour. We've been calling in the official opposition for a $15 an hour minimum wage since 2018. We've also twice introduced paid sick leave legislation since the onset of the pandemic, calling for a minimum of 10 paid sick days each year and 14 days during a public health crisis. Mr. Speaker, paid sick leave has been proven to save employers money while making workplaces healthier and safer for all workers. Also, Mr. Speaker, 71% of workers in Canada have experienced workplace violence and harassment. Much more needs to be done to ensure that workplaces in Saskatchewan are harassment-free. I'd like to read the prayer. We, in the prayer that reads as follows, respectfully request the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan call on the Government of Saskatchewan to improve conditions for Saskatchewan workers by passing legislation to increase the minimum wage, guarantee paid sick leave, limit non-disclosure agreements which could silence survivors of workplace harassment, and require employers to track and report incidents of violence and harassment in the workplace. Those individuals who signed the petition today come from Saskatoon. I do so present.
Reading and receiving petitions, statements by members. I recognize the member from Regina University.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this summer, I had the pleasure of meeting with Nathaniel Bates, former member of the Indian Head Rockets and former mayor of Richmond, California. Nat Bates and the entire Indian Head Rockets team were inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame last year, and this year were celebrated by the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame. He was back to Saskatchewan his 2nd year in a row for this recognition and to participate in the making of a documentary. And now, for those who are unfamiliar, the Rockets were an all-black baseball team that played in Saskatchewan and across Western Canada in the 1950s. And to the credit of this great province, Mr. Bates has said, we encountered no kinds of racism. We were highly accepted and appreciated, end quote. Now, not only was he a pioneering athlete, he served 9 terms on City Council, including 2 as mayor in California. And last year, he was only preceded in years and scope of service, so he says, by Queen Elizabeth. It was my pleasure to sit with Nat, hit some dingers, and learn from an experienced politician, and to celebrate and promote a proud part of Saskatchewan's history. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to give a shout out and recognize Halter Media and the Matembu family for championing living legends like Nat Bates and for making sure we celebrate this proud part of our history. Thank you.
Here. Recognize the member from Moosomin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From October 30th through November 7th, we are celebrating Aviation and Aerospace Week in Saskatchewan, giving us the perfect opportunity to recognize the valuable contributions of the aviation sector to our province. In emergencies, such as forest fires and floods, aviation plays a critical role in evacuating communities, ensuring the safety of people, and supporting emergency personnel on the ground. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to strengthening our aviation infrastructure through programs like the Community Airport Partnership, also known as CAP. CAP empowers communities to engage in thoughtful planning, enabling them to allocate their resources strategically. Mr. Speaker, an example of this positive impact that CAP is having can be seen in my constituency of Moosomin, where at the Moosomin Airport, which received $222,000 from a previous intake, enabling them to revitalize their local airport. This investment was directed towards completing Phase 1 of their plan, which includes constructing a new runway, apron, and access road. Such projects are pivotal in ensuring our province's residents have seamless access to vital services. Since 2008, our government has allocated nearly $10 million to support 43 diverse community airports, including critical upgrades like the one undertaken at Moosomin. The importance of embracing CAP and the need for aviation in our province cannot be overstated. Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate Aviation and Aerospace Week, our government is committed to strengthening and enhancing Saskatchewan's aviation infrastructure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon-Utana.
I rise today to recognize Fran Forsberg, a tireless advocate for human rights and trans and gender diverse kids. She is a recipient of a Woman of Distinction Award and a Human Rights Award, and many others recognizing her work and service in the community. Fran is the proud mom to 11 children and has opened her home to over 200 throughout the years. Fran doesn't shy away from a fight. She fought to have a gender marker removed from her child's birth certificate years ago, and in 2018, after the case made its way through the courts, it was ruled that gender markers could be removed from birth certificates for youth if requested. She organized a well-attended rally at the end of August in Saskatoon to protest the government's regressive Bill 137 that removes the fundamental rights of vulnerable children, and has filed a human rights complaint along with 20 other families. She was part of the group organizing the rally in front of the legislature and plans to hold a Facts Over Fear event with a panel of experts in November. Thank you to Fran for her tireless service in her community and for all the work she has done and continues to do to ensure all children feel safe in their communities and that they are protected by the rights guaranteed to them under the Human Rights Code.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month in Saskatchewan, and during this month we've recognized the contributions made by those with disabilities who are part of our workforce. Mr. Speaker, these people play a vital role in keeping our society functioning, and regardless of your disability, you should be able to find fulfilling work. This government continues to maintain its commitment to make Saskatchewan the best jurisdiction in Canada for people with disabilities. There is always more work to be done to create opportunities for all people in the province, but this government is on track to fulfilling our province. So thank you to the many workers with a visible or invisible disability who keep things running. Your hard work is appreciated by the entire province. This month, I encourage residents to be appreciative and thankful when interacting with workers and colleagues. You never know what they are dealing with during their workday. We all benefit from embracing equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. And thank you to all of our employees who are realizing the economic and social benefits of hiring employees experiencing disability. Thanks to everyone, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Recognize a member of Saskatoon Churchill Wildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with a heavy heart I share that the oldest resident of Saskatchewan, Sophie Evelyn Foster, passed away on October 21st. Sophie's celebration of an amazing life so well lived took place yesterday in Saskatoon. It would have been her 109th birthday. Mr. Speaker, Sophie was the oldest of 9 children. She was born to Anton and Nellie Ripa and raised in the Tadmore area near Kenora. She taught in Kerrobert and farmed with her husband, Wilfred. They had 2 children, Ronald and Evelyn. Once Sophie retired, she continued to teach English to new Canadians until she was 98 years old. I had the pleasure of getting to know Sophie as a constituent. I attended her 108th birthday party and nominated her for the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal that she received in person last November. She also received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012. Mr. Speaker, Sophie was a loyal government supporter. She worked on campaigns at the local level and kept current with provincial politics right to the end. I had a lovely visit with Sophie in St. Paul's Palliative Care Unit on August 2nd before her passing. Live simply, speak kindly, think deeply, love fully, be generous, and leave the rest to God was her life motto. She carried herself with such poise and grace, a very dignified lady. Rest in peace, Sophie. You will be dearly missed. Mr. Speaker, I ask that all members join me in expressing condolences to Sophie's family. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Recognize a member from Saskatoon Westview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From June 17th to the 25th, 8 Saskatchewan athletes participated in the 2023 Special Olympics World Summer Games in Berlin, Germany. These amazing athletes really showcased their talents in our province with a phenomenal showing. The athletes who competed at these games are Aaron Higgins in powerlifting, who came home with 3 silver medals and 1 bronze, Ian Cushion in 10-pin bowling, who won gold medals in men's singles and men's doubles. Mackenzie Miller in women's basketball won a silver medal. Stephen Saman won a gold medal in men's basketball. Taylor Carter took the gold medal in men's golf. Tara Dagenet won a bronze medal in women's soccer. In swimming, Tyler Savant won a gold medal as part of the 4x50 meter medley relay. And in track and field, Vanessa Giebert placed 7th in women's long jump and took part in the 4x100 meter relay. We also had 3 coaches head to Germany, Megan Penno and Ben Lazinski in women's basketball and Jackie Powell in swimming. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask all members to join me in recognizing all these amazing athletes and coaches who participated in the Games. Saskatchewan is proud of their hard work, determination, and the inspiration they provide. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Kindersley. Mr. Speaker, we know that the NDP don't like to talk about their record. We wouldn't either if it were ours. So, since it's almost Halloween, let's talk instead about just how scary a future under the NDP would be. Because comments last week from the member for Regina Elphinstone were quite telling about how the NDP views the needs in rural Saskatchewan. In defending the previous NDP government's closure of 52 rural hospitals, she believes it was justified because these hospitals were, quote, in communities of fewer than 1,000 people who were within 100 kilometers of acute care services, end quote. And because these hospitals were, quote, expensive and they weren't that well used, end quote. We now know what the NDP benchmark is for closures. Look out if your community dips below 1,000 people. Your schools and hospitals will be on the chopping block. The NDP drove people out of Saskatchewan and then closed schools and hospitals for those of us left behind. They punished rural Saskatchewan for their failure to grow this province. Thankfully, hope is restored in 2007. The province is growing, and this government is building schools, building hospitals, and we will protect from an NDP government who clearly feels justified in literally tearing this province apart. Question period. I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This tired and out-of-touch government is failing to offer any cost of living relief to Saskatchewan families who are struggling to pay their bills. And the latest food bank numbers, Mr. Speaker, show the urgency. In the past year alone, food bank usage in this province is up 24%. And since 2019, under that Premier's watch, it is up a whopping 50%. The question: when will the Premier accept any responsibility for the cost of living crisis that he and his government has created?
Recognize the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do thank the member opposite for the question. As we talk about affordability in this province, Mr. Speaker, and across the nation, affordability most certainly is a challenge for families. Mr. Speaker, yes, a challenge for businesses, for municipalities, for even the provincial government, but most importantly, I think, and most succinctly, that what we should be focused on, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this Assembly, is ensuring that Saskatchewan is one of the most affordable places to live, not only in Canada, Mr. Speaker, but affordable among our global competitors, Mr. Speaker, in attracting people here, while also being a safe place, Mr. Speaker, safe communities with the services that people ultimately expect to be available, Mr. Speaker, which is the balance that we tend to each and every day, providing healthcare services, providing highways, Mr. Speaker, investment in our highways, providing schools, Mr. Speaker, 60 new schools be built over the course of the last 15 years, Mr. Speaker, each and every year, while providing $2 billion in affordability measures in each and every budget, Mr. Speaker, added to and committed to in the most recent speech from the throne, with affordability measures for those that want to own a home, Mr. Speaker, with a reduction in the PST, Mr. Speaker, a grant when it comes to to a secondary suite program, Mr. Speaker, as well as a Saskatchewan Employment Incentive Program. And I would say the largest affordability measure that we would be able to see over the course of the last while would be an extension of the federal government's, Mr. Speaker, carbon tax abatement that is today focused primarily in Atlantic Canada, to extend that to all home heating sources, Mr. Speaker, including natural gas, which is predominantly used in Saskatchewan.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's extraordinary, but we found some agreements between the two sides of the House. Clearly what the federal government is doing isn't fair. Right. It's not fair to allow the exemption in some parts of Canada but not extend that to the West. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'd say it's extraordinarily unfair, and directing Sask Energy to not collect the federal carbon tax is an extraordinary but justified measure if a deal to restore fairness can't be found. Right. But, Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the people of this province can't wait until January 1st for relief. Right. They need relief today. Right. So when will the Premier roll back some of the measures that he's imposed on Saskatchewan people to offer that relief today?
Recognize the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, Sask Energy did provide an 8% reduction in our Sask Energy bills to families across the province, Mr. Speaker, ensuring and continuing the fact that Saskatchewan has the second lowest utility bundle as a whole of any province in the nation of Canada, Mr. Speaker. When ranked as affordable cities to live in, Saskatoon and Regina were first in 10th with respect to being some of the most affordable places to call home in the nation of Canada, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to the federal government's unfair policy favouring families in Atlantic Canada, Mr. Speaker, not by any stretch favouring families, with a policy that I would say, the carbon tax policy that we have always said is the wrong policy, Mr. Speaker, but at least in years gone by was enacted fairly. Today it's still the wrong policy. It isn't being enacted fairly today, Mr. Speaker, and so we would say three things with respect to that. First, still our belief that the federal government should scrap the carbon tax for everyone on everything, Mr. Speaker. That's priority number one. Second is they should extend their pause to all forms of heating, Mr. Speaker, and if not, Sask Energy is going to quit collecting the federal carbon tax come January the 1st.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the Premier heard the question, but there's agreement there, and there are things that this government could and should be doing today to offer that relief. But, Mr. Speaker, clearly, people across this province, across the country, are tired of divisive political games. They're tired of the federal government sowing division between East and West, for sure. And they're tired of this provincial government that recalled this very legislature for nothing other than to sow division here in this province. It's shameful politics, Mr. Speaker, on all fronts. So what is that Premier's plan to make sure that the voices of Saskatchewan people are heard, and what is his plan to get a deal that offers the same relief to people here in Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Premier.
Well, I'm pretty sure the people of this province, their voice is being heard and heard well today, Mr. Speaker, with respect to ensuring that federal government, propped up by the NDP, Mr. Speaker, the federal government is fully aware that we believe that this carbon tax scheme that they have enacted, of which we have never agreed with, Mr. Speaker, is removed for everyone on everything. That's priority one. Remove this carbon tax scheme, Mr. Speaker, this Trudeau carbon tax scheme that is supported by the NDP. Right. Mr. Speaker, if there was ever a reason to write your federal leader and say, remove our party from this confidence and supply agreement that you have signed, Mr. Speaker, today is that day. Will the Leader of the Opposition do that?
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he didn't ask for advice, but here's some advice for him. Something I find more effective than tweeting, more effective than standing up in this legislature is to actually have a plan. You know what? Earlier today, I called the federal leader and I expressed very clearly the concerns of this province. My understanding is they share our same concerns, but when he's hopefully talking to all the federal leaders, he will reiterate that and clarify that. Yep. My question again, what is the Premier's plan, other than tweets, other than standing up in this legislature, to actually get a deal to provide that relief to Saskatchewan people?
Recognize the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, our plan is to ensure that there is fairness for families across this nation. Right. Mr. Speaker, our plan is to ensure that come January 1st, Sask energy bills at today are 40% of that bill is a federal carbon tax supported by the NDP, Mr. Speaker, an NDP right here in this House that called our carbon tax lawsuit frivolous, Mr. Speaker.
Right. Remember that?
A lawsuit, Mr. Speaker, that was there to ensure and to battle for fairness for Saskatchewan families. Now what we see through an NDP support of a Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, not only do we have the wrong policy enacted across this nation, which was enacted fairly across the nation, now we have the wrong policy that is not enacted fairly across this nation, Mr. Speaker. That's what the confidence and supply agreement that Jagmeet Singh offered the Liberals has achieved in this nation, Mr. Speaker. One of the most divisive federal governments that this nation has ever seen, Mr. Speaker. What we are going to do is continue to offer $2 billion in affordability measures for Saskatchewan people. What we are going to do, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that we fight for families living in the city of Regina, the city of Saskatoon, wherever they live, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that we are fighting for fairness for those Saskatchewan families.
Recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, this leader of the official opposition has been clear. We don't support the federal carbon tax. She's been clear with Jagmeet Singh. She's clear with Trudeau. She's clear with Poilievre. It's that sort of tacky politics that continues to fail the people of this province. It's costing families that just can't afford it. But this tired and out-of-touch government is only making things worse. Power bill hikes, fee hikes, the largest tax hike in Saskatchewan's history, with their PST on, well, pretty much everything, Mr. Speaker. That's Sask Party government's record. When will this tired and out-of-touch government finally offer an ounce of relief for cash-strapped families in Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we've gone over this a number of times in this Assembly. It's the same question that they keep asking. They're going to get the same answer. Quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, with taxes, housing, and utilities all included, Saskatchewan is the most affordable province in our country, Mr. Speaker. That is large measures of tax reductions that we have made, plus incentives for families. For example, we have the lowest personal income tax in the country. We have the second lowest utility bundle in the country. We substantively reduced education property tax. There used to be revolts in our province, quite frankly. Under the NDP, we introduced the active families benefit. We introduced the children's drug plan, Mr. Speaker. We have the first time home buyers tax credit, and today we announced 2 additional home ownership and rental programs that will go forward to help with affordability in this province, Mr. Speaker. So again, we are the most affordable province in the country.
Recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, the minister wants to talk about revolts. There were 2,000 people at that minister's office this weekend, Mr. Speaker. And that government wants to talk about build and protect. It's nonsense, Mr. Speaker. They're the ones who decided to tax building things in Saskatchewan. The PST rebate the minister announced is a rebate from the Sask Party's own PST on construction labor that pertains only to a very small fraction of their job-killing tax on construction labor. Talk about tired and out of touch, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister of Finance really expect Saskatchewan people to say thank you for giving people a very small portion of their own money back?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Thank Mr. Speaker. It's interesting that the member opposite, who has absolutely no plan whatsoever what he would do differently, should know that building permits are up 59% year over year. 59%. So although he says it kills all those projects, somehow they're getting permits to build something, Mr. Speaker. So he should know that and maybe acknowledge that things are happening in our province. They're happening in the province that is one of the lowest provinces with taxes, housing, and utilities all included, Mr. Speaker. There is no one thing that can address the pressures when there's inflationary pressures, but I'll tell you one thing, that is a party that has absolutely not a clue what they would do differently.
Recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, talk about out of touch. That finance minister denies their record as the second worst economic record in Canada under that premier, Mr. Speaker. And maybe worse, Mr. Speaker, they deny the reality people know all too well with the cost of living, Mr. Speaker. The measures that have been announced by that government don't provide any relief for the vast majority of families. Families are barely keeping up with the bills and struggling to get by. Where is the cost of living relief for regular families being left behind by this tired and out-of-touch government?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Trade and Export Development.
Let's clarify some facts, Mr. Speaker. This is the party opposite that stood up day after day after day and called our fight against the carbon tax a pointless crusade. Every one of those members, that member as well, Mr. Speaker, standing up and calling this government's consistent fight for years against the Trudeau NDP carbon tax a pointless crusade. They put their finger to the wind now, Mr. Speaker, and say, oh, well, maybe things have shifted a little bit. We should shift our position or say we are. Nobody in this House, Mr. Speaker, and nobody in this province believes that they have changed their stripes on this. They absolutely support a carbon tax. They absolutely would continue to support Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, the increases in the carbon tax. I have never heard them, Mr. Speaker, say a word criticizing Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh, and they still haven't.
Recognize the member from Regina Atkinson Centre.
Mr. Speaker, again, didn't touch the question, denies their record, deny the reality of Saskatchewan people. The problem is that these distraction politics, their failure on the economy has real impacts for struggling Saskatchewan families out there. Food Banks Canada, Mr. Speaker, their latest hunger count represents a new low watermark for this government. Once again, food banks in this province saw a record number of users. In March, visits were up 24%, Mr. Speaker, from the year before. Right. Since March of 2019, since they're so interested in talking about the past, Mr. Speaker, the increase was 50%, Mr. Speaker. This tired and out-of-touch government would have us believe in growth that works for everyone, when all that's growing is the number of people out there having to use the food bank. Hear, hear. Can the minister explain why the people of Saskatchewan are going 50% more hungry under his watch? Hear, hear.
Recognize the Minister of Social Services.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. We certainly know there are challenges out there in particular low-income families, Mr. Speaker. That's why we've been able, over the last several years, to increase rates on the income assistance side. Mr. Speaker, we have things like the Saskatchewan Housing Benefit, many programs for seniors, Mr. Speaker, families, in terms of the income taxes that we've been able to lower in our time in government, Mr. Speaker. We have help for students, of course, and we have help for vulnerable individuals on the low-income tax credit, the housing benefit, disability tax credit, caregiver tax credit, Saskatchewan aids to independent living, Mr. Speaker. So we are continuing to work on these, and again, we'll try to help individuals and families who are struggling out there.
Yep. Here.
Recognize the member from Regina Alfred Centre.
Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. Many of these families, they work a full-time shift, and then they have to stop by the food bank on the way home. Right. That's not even who we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. In recent days, this tired and out-of-touch government has made it more than clear that they don't care about the safety and well-being of kids. These food bank numbers are just proving what we already know, Mr. Speaker. 40% of visitors to the food bank are kids, Saskatchewan kids. Children went to the food banks in this province over 22,193 times in 1 month. 22,000 times, Mr. Speaker, families couldn't feed their kids in a month. Why isn't that minister recalling an emergency session for that? He's too busy targeting vulnerable kids.
Hear, hear.
Recognized Minister of Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I talked previously about the help we give to families and children. Mr. Speaker, not only through child and family, but also within this throne speech, Mr. Speaker, we're going to help low-income families with the Sask Employment Incentive. There'll be more to say about that in the coming days, but Mr. Speaker, this targets families to be able to afford going to work, and that complements the work done in our income assistance programs that we have, Mr. Speaker. In terms of supporting families, there's a whole of income approach that we have towards supporting families of low income, Mr. Speaker. Of course, the increase in the minimum wage, but also an individual who happens to have 3 children living in Saskatchewan would receive through different benefits, including the CIS program, Mr. Speaker, $3,463 every month, tax-free, to help them pay the bills throughout each month. Thank you.
Here, here. Recognize a member from the John Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, for the minister to get up and rattle off all the programs that exist that are so-called supporting families as these numbers get worse is clearly out of touch. If the minister doesn't want to educate himself on the rampant poverty in this province, I have no choice but to stand here and do his job for him, because this is not a new issue. Last month, Food Banks Canada handed Saskatchewan a D on its poverty report card. In experience of poverty categories and poverty measures, we were tied for dead last in the country. Saskatchewan people want and deserve a government that will lead, not in mortgage foreclosures, not in poverty, Mr. Speaker, but on things that we can be proud of. Now, they tell us our food banks had nearly 56,000 visits just in March. Do these numbers not worry the minister? What will it take for him to take urgent action on the poverty problem?
Recognize the Minister of Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, we certainly know there are challenges out there, and again, we've been increasing over our time in government the supports available to low-income individuals and families, and those investment in those programs has been boosted by $312 million, or 102%, since we've been able to have the honour of forming government, Mr. Speaker. I talked about the employment incentive, Mr. Speaker. In terms of the child and family programs, we spent $380 million looking after those most vulnerable children within our province. In terms of income assistance benefits, we do have some of the highest levels available. That's third-party independent bodies have looked at our rates and compared them across Canada, and we compare favorably. I would also note that many of these programs have come about from this government. There was no SED program, for example, Mr. Speaker. There was no seniors income plan. On and on it goes. We've created those programs because we realize there are challenges out there. We've been able to increase those steadily over time within each budget coming forward, and we'll look at that again into the future.
Here, here. Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, Saskatchewan teachers stood as one to say enough is enough. That's right. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation held a vote on job sanctions, and 95% voted in support. They did it because the Sask Party government has refused to listen to teachers and fix the state of education in this province. They could solve these issues today if they wanted to. Will the minister finally listen to 95% of teachers and address the public education crisis in Saskatchewan?
Recognize Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we'd be happy to discuss those issues with the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. However, they walked away from the bargaining table a couple weeks ago and declared an impasse, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know that deals aren't negotiated here on the floor of the Assembly. They're not negotiated outside, they're negotiated at the bargaining table. And our government believes that the best deals come from the bargaining table, so I would invite the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation back to the bargaining table so we can continue working on a fair deal for teachers.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
Mr. Speaker, let's correct the record on this minister here. Now, clearly he doesn't want to bargain on the floor of this Assembly, but he doesn't want to bargain at the table either. That's right. He refused to even consider 9 out of 10 of the STF's proposals for addressing critical issues in Saskatchewan classrooms. That's not bargaining, that is a brick wall. And our kids are the ones paying the price for this minister's failures. Will the minister at least, will that new education minister at least pretend to care about classrooms, our teachers and our children, and will he discuss these proposals at the table?
Hear, hear.
Recognize Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we bargain at the table, things take time. I would say that the STF's representation that we did not discuss 9 of the 10 things is inaccurate, and I would say that we had made good progress on a number of smaller issues. Deals take time, Mr. Speaker, and we want to invite the Teachers Federation back to the bargaining table. We've got a fair deal for teachers that we've put on the table. Mr. Speaker, I'd say that we've had little engagement on that offer around compensation. Again, I want to get a fair deal done for teachers to give predictability to families and students and teachers all across our province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Fairview.
Mr. Speaker, families, community members, Justice McGaw, the Children's Advocate, the Human Rights Commission, all have raised serious concerns about the potential harm caused by this government's use of the notwithstanding clause for their pronoun policy. We know that trans and gender diverse kids experience higher rates of social isolation, self-harm, and suicide than the general population. But instead of supporting kids, this government is doing the opposite. When will we see real supports to ensure that no more kids are losing their lives to suicide?
Recognize the Minister of Rural and Remote Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we take mental health and addictions very seriously on this side of the House, and no more seriously when it involves our children. That is why, as part of the new Mental Health and Addictions Action Plan, Mr. Speaker, we are expanding mental health services for children and youth in this province. We are expanding the rapid access counselling to 13 communities, with 11 more communities to come, Mr. Speaker. We're also expanding the mental health capacity building from 10 schools to 15 schools, Mr. Speaker. And we are going to continue to expand that until at least one school in every school division across this province has the mental health capacity building available to it. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work to support children and to support families as they deal with the mental health and addictions in this province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minister says that these supports are working. Mr. Speaker, it's been so clear by community and stakeholders that this simply isn't enough. That's exactly what we heard from Sarah Mackenzie when she came to her legislature to talk about the death of her child, B, that these supports are clearly not enough. When will we see a robust plan of real supports from this government?
Recognize the Minister of Rural and Remote Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and once again, I would express my condolences to the family for their loss in this regard. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we have a plan to expand services to children and youth for mental health and addictions. We are also providing a very broad spectrum of care on the continuum of care as we expand our mental health and addiction spaces across this province to more than double what we currently offer, Mr. Speaker. That would be a broad spectrum of services to individuals wherever they may be on that continuum of care. We will meet them to ensure that whatever stage of their recovery they're at, whatever stage of their mental health capacity that they are at, where they need the services, we will meet them and provide those services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ministerial statements, introduction of bills, presenting reports by standing and special committees. I recognize a member from Regina Walsh Acres.
I'm seeking leave to move a motion under Rule 61, Mr. Speaker.
Will the member briefly state the purpose of the motion and read the text of the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an important motion I hope we can all be united on based on the unfair and divisive actions we've seen from the federal government over the weekend. If granted leave, I would move the following motion: that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the unfair decision by the Government of Canada to allow oil used for home heating to be exempt from the federal carbon tax, while offering no relief to families in Saskatchewan who rely on natural gas, and that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the divisive comments made by the Minister of Rural Economic Development, the Honourable Goody Hutchins, on October 28, 2023, in which she blames Canadians living on the prairies for the unfair choices of the Liberal government, and that the Assembly calls on all parties in the Parliament of Canada to work quickly to remove the federal carbon tax from all forms of home heating for all Canadians.
The member for Regina Walsh Acres has requested leave to move without notice a motion of urgent and pressing necessity under Rule 61. Is leave granted? Leave has been granted. The member may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the members for granting leave. Mr. Speaker, the climate crisis is real. Here in Saskatchewan, you just have to ask one of the hundreds of people in northern Saskatchewan who fled their homes this summer because of the devastating forest fires and choking smoke. You just have to ask any producer down in the southwest part of our province who has been experiencing crippling drought for a number of years now and are struggling to feed their livestock. Or you could ask the Premier, who is heading to COP28 next month. Saskatchewan people are looking to the government to do their part in reducing emissions in this province in a way that is thoughtful and makes sense on the prairies. Saskatchewan New Democrats are committed to doing that. However, Saskatchewan people haven't seen that from this government, and they haven't seen it from the federal government. But it is clear, Mr. Speaker, the carbon tax is not the answer that Saskatchewan people want to address climate change, and I agree with them. We, Saskatchewan New Democrats, agree with them. We do not support the federal carbon tax. It was with great dismay this weekend that we learned that the federal government, after seeing their plummeting polling results in the Maritimes, has introduced measures to suspend the carbon tax on home heating oil in Atlantic Canada. Where is the fairness in this decision, Mr. Speaker? Saskatchewan people also need to heat their homes. Why won't they see relief in this affordability crisis? It is ridiculous that the federal government would set this scenario up, which now pits region against region in our great country. And so I move the following motion: that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the unfair decision by the Government of Canada to allow oil used for home heating to be exempted from the federal carbon tax while offering no relief to families in Saskatchewan who rely on natural gas. And that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the divisive comments made by the Minister of Rural Economic Development, the Honourable Goody Hutchins, on October 28, 2023, in which she blames Canadians living on the prairies for the unfair choices of the Liberal government, and that the Assembly calls on all parties in the Parliament of Canada to quickly work to remove the federal carbon tax from all forms of home heating for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member has moved that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the unfair decision by the Government of Canada to allow oil used for home heating to be exempt from the federal carbon tax while offering no relief to families in Saskatchewan who rely on natural gas, and that the Assembly expressed deep concern over the divisive comments made by the Minister of Rural Economic Development and the Honourable Rudy Hutchins on October 28, 2023, in which she blames Canadians living on the prairies for the unfair choices of the Liberal government, and that the Assembly calls on all parties in the Parliament of Canada to quickly work to remove the federal carbon tax from all forms of heating, home heating for all Canadians. Is the Assembly ready for the question? I recognize Minister of Crown Investments Corporation.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Trudeau government announced a 3-year exemption of the carbon tax for home heating oil. This exemption will primarily benefit families in Atlantic Canada, where a greater percentage of households use heating oil compared to the rest of the country. The Trudeau-Singh coalition have effectively admitted that 2 of the myths that they've been spreading about the carbon tax are untrue. The first myth is that the carbon tax is affordable and that Canadians will get more in rebates than they pay in carbon taxes. If that were true, Mr. Speaker, then there would be no reason for the federal government to provide this exemption as an affordability measure. Right. The second myth is that this is a tax that is being applied fairly in all areas of the country based on a set rate per ton of greenhouse gas GHG emissions. Heating oil, it should be noted, Mr. Speaker, is primarily used in one part of the country and has a higher GHG emissions than other sources, heat sources like natural gas, which most Saskatchewan people use to heat their homes. The federal government has effectively chosen to make life more affordable for families in one part of the country while leaving Saskatchewan families out in the cold. In Atlantic Canada, 40% of households use heating oil to heat their homes compared to just 0.4% of Saskatchewan households. As we know, Mr. Speaker, natural gas is our primary source of home heating in Saskatchewan, with 85% of households having natural gas furnaces. Our government cannot accept the federal Liberal NDP government giving an affordability break to people in one part of the country, but not here. So today, as you've already heard, Mr. Speaker, we are calling on the federal government to offer the same carbon tax exemption to Saskatchewan families by extending it to all forms of heating, home heating, including natural gas. This is the only fair thing to do for all Canadian families. It is our government's hope that this exemption will be provided soon. If this exemption is not provided, then effective January 1st, 2024, Sask Energy will stop collecting and remitting the carbon tax on natural gas. This will effectively provide Saskatchewan people with the same exemption that the federal government is giving Atlantic Canadians who use heating oil. We continue to call on the federal government to scrap their carbon tax completely, but as long as they are going to continue to charge this tax, our government is going to ensure that Saskatchewan people are treated fairly and equally as Canadians in other parts of the country. That means there should be no carbon tax charge on natural gas to heat your home in Saskatchewan this winter. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will move the following amendment: that all the words after unfair choices of the Liberal government and be replaced with that this Assembly supports the Premier of Saskatchewan's plan to scrap the carbon tax on everything for everyone, that if the Liberal NDP coalition government refuses to scrap the carbon tax, that all forms of home heating across Canada be exempted from the carbon tax, and further, that if none of the above is implemented by the Liberal NDP coalition, that this Assembly supports the Government of Saskatchewan's plan to not collect and remit the carbon tax on Sask Energy bills beginning January 1st, 2024. I so move.
Hear, hear.
The Minister has made an amendment that all words after unfair choices of the Liberal government and be replaced with that this Assembly supports the Premier of Saskatchewan's plan to scrap the carbon tax on everything for everyone that if the Liberal NDP coalition government refuses to scrap the carbon tax, that all forms of home heating across Canada be exempt from the carbon tax, and further that if none of the above is implemented by the Liberal NDP coalition, that this Assembly supports the Government of Saskatchewan's plan to not collect and remit the carbon tax on energy bills beginning January 1st, 2024. Is the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. I recognize the member from Regina University.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a unique privilege to be able to enter into, I suppose it's debate in this Assembly on an issue in which there appears to be some real consistency between both sides of this Assembly. I don't trust my memory at the best of times, Mr. Speaker, but this is a fun opportunity, and I really want to focus on that, Mr. Speaker, because it is a real opportunity, Mr. Speaker. There's agreement, and despite perhaps some of the difficulties in hearing it, there is agreement between both sides of this Assembly when it comes to the federal carbon tax not being the right solution for Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, we've been clear, the Leader of the Opposition has been clear that this is not right for Saskatchewan, and Mr. Speaker, she's been clear with everyone, Mr. Speaker. Right. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, we know we're out talking to our constituents, and we know that this has an impact on Saskatchewan households, Saskatchewan small businesses, Saskatchewan farms, Saskatchewan industry. Right. This is significant, and this has a greater impact in the prairies in Saskatchewan, has been rightly pointed out by members on both sides, due to our reliance, due to our natural gas system of heating here in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. We should be proud and supportive of the great Crown corporations that we have and the great work done by Sask Energy, Mr. Speaker, in keeping our houses, our businesses, our farms, our industry running and warm in those cold, dark nights which have started all too early. And we've talked about it a lot in this Assembly, Mr. Speaker. This is the great challenge for our province right now, whether it's power generation, whether it's the realities of climate change and of needing to adjust how we do things while keeping life affordable and while keeping this economy moving and a province open for investment and for the opportunities, both with our traditional industries and for 21st century technologies, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, to the comments made by the federal minister, it's unfortunately the kind of crass politics that people hate to see. It was really saying the quiet part out loud and also saying it into a microphone, Mr. Speaker. And it's not about the fight. And far too often, that's what we see in this Assembly, Mr. Speaker. It's what we see. It's what we see online, and it's what we see from leadership, Mr. Speaker, shown by this government. It's that they're not interested in solutions, Mr. Speaker. They're actually only interested in the fight. And, Mr. Speaker, whether it's climate change, whether it's affordability, whether it's the opportunity for this great new opportunity that we have here in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, to move into the 21st century with a government who has moved us from first in the country to last when it comes to this innovation, when it comes to these opportunities. People are calling out for solutions, Mr. Speaker. We heard it here today from my colleagues, whether it's on opportunities for home heating, whether it's on opportunities for power generation or opportunities for affordability, Mr. Speaker. People aren't interested in the conflict. They're not interested in the cheap talking points, whether they're coming from the members opposite or they're coming from the federal government. People are interested, Mr. Speaker, in solutions. They're crying out for these solutions, Mr. Speaker, and we see this in other parts of the country. You know, Mr. Speaker, we've seen this even in Atlantic Canada. Those premiers worked together and they took the federal government to task, Mr. Speaker, and it is unfortunate that the federal government is picking winners and losers when it comes to the implementation of this tax and when it comes to the impacts, because we know, Mr. Speaker, all members agree that this has a disproportionate impact on people in the prairies, Mr. Speaker. And it's good to have this type of agreement in the House, Mr. Speaker, because as I've said, this is a critical issue. It's an issue of opportunity, it's an issue of investment, and it's an issue of affordability, Mr. Speaker. So as I said, people in Saskatchewan are not simply interested in the fight, they're interested in the solutions, Mr. Speaker. And if we in this Assembly can come together with some unity, with some leadership and some vision, like that which has been shown by the Leader of the Opposition, and find some solutions for Saskatchewan people, Mr. Speaker, we will all be better served. Thank you.
It has been moved in amendment to the motion that all the words after unfair choices of the Liberal government be replaced with that this Assembly supports the Premier of Saskatchewan's plan to scrap the carbon tax on everything from everyone, that if the Liberal NDP coalition government refuses to scrap the carbon tax, that all forms of home heating across Canada be exempted from the carbon tax, and further that if none of the above is implemented by the Liberal NDP coalition, that this Assembly supports the Government of Saskatchewan's plan to not collect and remit the carbon tax on Sask Energy bills beginning January 1st, 2024. It's the pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Those in favour say yea. Yea. Call on the members. All in favor of the amendment, please stand.
Mr. Moe?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. McMorris?
Yes.
Mr. Hindley?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Ms. Harpower? Yes. Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Merriman?
Yes.
Ms. Tell?
Yes.
Mr. Makowski? Mr. Merritt?
Yes.
Mr. Shovel-Dayoff?
Yes.
Mr. Scorpad?
Yes.
Mr. Kading?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Regina Rochdale?
Yes.
Ms. Eyre?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison Meadow Lake?
Yes.
Ms. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Hargrave?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod Moose Jaw North?
Yes.
Mr. Buckingham?
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes.
Mr. Fayez? Yes. Mr. Dennis?
Yes.
Ms. Lampert?
Yes.
Mr. Ottenbright?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Young Lloyd-Minster?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bonk?
Yes.
Mr. Nerline?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod Lumsden Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Gowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Kiesig?
Yes.
Mr. Lemeg?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison Cannington?
Yes.
Mr. Domitar?
Yes.
Ms. Beck?
Yes.
Ms. Mowat?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Mr. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Teed?
Yes.
Ms. Young Regina University?
Yes.
Mr. Berkey?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Saar?
Yes.
Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Bose?
Yes.
Ms. Ritchie?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
And all those opposed, please stand. Seeing none.
Mr. Speaker, those in favor of the motion, 52. Those opposed, 0.
I declare the amendment carried. The question before the Assembly is the amended motion that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the unfair decision by the Government of Canada to allow oil used for home heating to be exempted from the federal carbon tax, or offering no relief to families in Saskatchewan who rely on natural gas, that the Assembly expresses deep concern over the divisive comments made by the Minister of Rural and Economic Development, the Honourable Rudy Hutchings, on October 28, 2023, in which she blames Canadians living on the prairies for the unfair choices of the Liberal government, and that this Assembly supports the Premier of Saskatchewan's plan to scrap the carbon tax on everything for everyone. That if the Liberal NDP coalition government refuses to scrap the carbon tax, that all forms of home heating across Canada be exempted from the carbon tax, and further that if none of the above is implemented by the Liberal NDP coalition, that this Assembly supports the Government of Saskatchewan's plan to not collect and remit the carbon tax on energy bills beginning January 1st, 2024. Is it pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion? Call on the members. All those in favor, please stand.
Mr. Moe?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. McMorris?
Yes.
Mr. Hinley? Yes. Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Ms. Harpower?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Merriman?
Yes.
Ms. Tell?
Yes.
Mr. Murkowski?
Yes.
Mr. Merritt?
Yes.
Mr. Shovel-Dayoff?
Yes.
Mr. Skorpad?
Yes.
Mr. Kading?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Regina Rochdale?
Yes.
Ms. Eyre?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison Meadow Lake?
Yes.
Ms. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Hargrave?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod Moose Jaw North?
Yes.
Mr. Buckingham?
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes.
Mr. Fayez?
Yes.
Mr. Dennis?
Yes.
Ms. Lampert?
Yes.
Mr. Ottenbright?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Young Lloyd-Minster?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bonk?
Yes.
Mr. Nerline?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Friesen?
Yes.
Mr. Gowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Kiesig?
Yes.
Mr. Lemig?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison Cannington?
Yes.
Mr. Domitar?
Yes.
Ms. Beck?
Yes.
Ms. Mowat?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Mr. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Teed?
Yes.
Ms. Young Regina University?
Yes.
Mr. Berkey?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Saar?
Yes.
Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Ritchie?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
All those opposed, please stand.
Mr. Speaker, those in favor of the motion, 52. Those opposed, 0.
I declare the amendment motion carried. I recognize the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask for leave to move a motion of transmittal.
The Government House Leader has asked leave to move a motion of transmittal. Is leave granted? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to colleagues. I move that the Speaker, on behalf of the Legislative Assembly, transmit copies of the motion, as well as verbatim transcripts of the debate and the vote, to Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, Jagmeet Singh, Leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, and Pierre Poilievre, Leader of the Official Opposition of Canada. I so move.
The Government House Leader moved that the Speaker, on behalf of the Legislative Assembly, transmit copies of the motion as well as verbatim transcripts of the debate and the vote to Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, Jagmeet Singh, Leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, and Pierre Poilievre, Leader of the Official Opposition of Canada. It is a pleasure of the Assembly to adopt the motion. Carried.
Orders of the day, special order, resume debate on the motion by Mr. Morgan, seconded by Mr. McLeod, Lumsden Morris, and the proposed amendment by Ms. Conway, seconded by Mr. Witherspoon.
Recognize the member from Athabasca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just last week, I attended at the Wetaskiwin Centre regarding us recognizing treaty boundaries with provincial signs. And there were elders present at that announcement, and the Treaty Commissioner was there. And I addressed the announcement. I spoke to it in my language. And when I sat back down, the elders acknowledged that. And we spoke about in this House that I'm able and privileged to address the people of Athabasca and northern Saskatchewan in my Dene language. And so today's response to the throne speech, I'm going to start off in Dene. And the one thing that the elders and I recognized was how far we've come when we speak about reconciliation. And it was very quickly acknowledged that at one point this was not possible. So it is with great pride, honor, and privilege, sayatia dani halyastiha. Donhunt o dana asatelo dani tsankoil tela noni. Dani ha tant I hiltsi how had nothing that uk atoli had a yel tila. Ane no tsambak I that hila tant I hiltsi di diha. Ku a yai no ni da dani kanil ni dani harin cha bonit ala. Adur nok a hot in nik a sihil chui, hot theot a siklan alt sis nila. A yiba ak hola a siklan hot in a thela. Sa nana nin telas tuido gots anst in, sa kui honal tani kui ho lela. A yi sa kui honal tani kui din tila. A yi kola but anarthit aha ho anla. Dene beni adai au han tui adai are, dan ubets idioli hat ita yel tila ja. Sa hiring lai, dene thoughts yik anate, a yi bets idi hat idila. Koharin chalant alayi. Dani godu ansnathu dan uba bathi jium bits idiuli a yiha hotila jan dan Dorothy e. No has canu, no has anku, no halot in no has any Jana Dorothy Yala. Nak and no ha quench ase holan huit lahu, then ha nailed tiu contu dan hadathi jean la jan. Then as to it in an ilio, then it's idila day, did the ela la jan. A Asia na stanu dani soni an la babati yin haja. Dan sapa ala now dan es itiu jan yesane de horin chalant a gandathi jin. Hen nathide do hijadik after san kontu ha hitila. Then it's at you hiring light and dan tu as katan the new libets itiu. Then a yan linde babahorenia hilie hat a jan kontu then it's itila. Then it be ni adai au hantu abast ilade, bonal yalade, but it hat it anla. A yin lo than go to ansnate, a yin had done 2 honest canide, ni theni, a de papa ahilyala. Said Nenik at Denny Hodonald Henla doing Sakuhonas ten Helinha. A year yin lo na hiring like hunt u Denny Kendall Nila. Had nothing on hoti. Had nothing day do hijadik atilosa a yeha hotila. A asayatia Denny Halyasti, her in Charlant a. Gani feeling ashna the hell he die. A yadu had nisse hunt a Helenia. Nene yatia deni hayatini aharin chalant asa henni. A ye coats in dear lant ella. Hennisidok and a hosteo, Hennisidant uno catanesi, ni daba asi est ilala. Colla doing no that any got a hit lium that has cannon look any in a dresslia. Benam being est ahitea, dunizinic adont udan hayastilla. A ye but then earth it au, beniriti who cont uhaho anla. Ko hit jail day, had ne as cano hit delu, had nothing on unin day, yet he did a hilla. Aunt na the hayans today, dog oats a hotale, henila. Then it got the hayans today, had nothing to hit jare, Carthilusan had knee. Could birth it a ha Allah. A giant yesterday on two as Adanil high. A giant yesterday no hanes in. Then it got to Aunt Nato as no hanes in la. A out than if yet he healed true, then a sure thilt out, had nothing to hit jare, Carthilusan than a contour hodalla. A season saying nails hot at any yet he at any hayatines are. Don't ud any abets have a liu, don't hiring light and as Allah now, don't eat Tennessee. Tanis it's a yazut ho, no need any hit liunto and na hit liunto, don't eat you. As eat deal, had nothing to hijadik out of the Sunday than a ye ari dealer. A ye asses and do not uno habayatines I. See don't uno habati ye. So no I need that are in charmer sin honestanza. Nanda Danny Hosium, that who tails it and hitling. Knock a her needle, knock a her nalant echo, as eat deal, as sahil yade, cont u yet he feel ande, but adivani del hala. Don't no but in you, don't and don't no but in you, hot account a hin lila. A asses on her in child, so yet see I back band as Ethel, Sascanos, its uncle, Satukazo, a yes it's a nia, set a kill, and now, cont or as about her and Nila John and hat ye. A asses on me that mercy no honestanza. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I recently attended a youth leadership forum in Saskatoon. Youth from Saskatoon, Atakakup First Nation, and Makwasahagan First Nation were represented. Mr. Speaker, speech from the throne reminded us that over the last 16 years, this government has worked to build a province worthy of confidence and pride of the Saskatchewan people. I was reminded at the Youth Leadership Forum, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of exactly that. The collective pride we all share for this beautiful province. After spending a day with the youth, listening to them articulate leadership attributions they want to aspire to, I left there with a tremendous amount of pride. Mr. Speaker, our young people are watching and listening. These young people are already leaders in their schools, some leading their youth church groups, and volunteering in their respective communities. Mr. Speaker, that is what hope looks like. After the Youth Leadership Forum, I went to the FSIN powwow. Mr. Speaker, speaking of pride and hope, ribbon skirts being worn, each uniquely designed, and I know some are designed to reflect family history. Regalia that is carefully constructed to reflect strength, identity, and pride. Mr. Speaker, youth and elders equally participating, our shared history acknowledged, and our future being guided. Mr. Speaker, when we are in moments of when reconciliation is unfolding, it should never pass anybody. We should always recognize it. If anything, the youth also reminded us about was to be grateful, what it means to show gratitude, and to also speak the truth and know the history. And Mr. Speaker, with that pride and that sense of hope is what I saw in the speech the throne speech. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan's strong economy and all the opportunities a strong economy brings is reflected in Athabasca and northern Saskatchewan. Cameco, NextGen, Denison Mining, Foran is an example of economic growth that people from northern Saskatchewan is taking a part in. These opportunities, Mr. Speaker, gives residents of northern Saskatchewan an opportunity to play a part in what the world needs. Mr. Speaker, education is key when it comes to taking advantage of these opportunities. I would like to commend our advanced education institutions that provide strong education in the north. Northlands College, Gabriel Dumont Institute, First Nation University, University of Saskatchewan, University of Regina, SIIT, SAS Polytech, are all partnerships when we talk about what advanced education looks like in northern Saskatchewan. We have nursing education that is happening in the north. I was at an event at the Alacross Hospital where the University Saskatchewan's nursing department was there to celebrate 80 years of delivering nursing education. And part of that partnership, we had 60 students graduate out of Alacross to become nurses. Mr. Speaker, that is something that we should be proud of. That is what people are taking advantage of in the north. Mr. Speaker, this government's investment into northern Saskatchewan can be seen in the new elementary school being built in La Loche. That is what investment into the future looks like. I was recently there, and I see the construction going up, and speaking to people in the community, that is with such pride that this is what their future looks like for the youth. And that also takes us into a whole different discussion of what do we do with the old building? What do we do? What other opportunities can we be a part of for northern Saskatchewan? This is my own personal goal, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but I'd like to see a Dene Center of Excellence in La Loche, where our advanced education institution and the opportunities that we present to northern people is in one roof. And that is doable if we work together. And that is exactly the discussions that we have locally, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about mental health addictions, and I spoke here before about the challenges that we've experienced within my family. I had a brother that took his own life. And I lost a brother and 2 nephews to alcoholism within the last 2 years. So, Mr. Speaker, when I sit in my seat and when I hear the constructive, if not, I would not call it constructive, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When I hear criticism and the heckling, asking and saying that I'm not here for my people, and the questions being posed to me, communities like Pine House, for the past 40 years, have taken ownership of their history and changed the foundation of their community with a model called Muskwa Wellness Camp. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was in the community when we announced the funding for them to continue their project, their wellness camp. And some of the feedback that I got were from community leaders. What the mayor of Pine House said was, this was the best day we've had with government in our community. Mr. Speaker, why he said that was, we committed almost $1 million this year alone to Pine House. We've secured 12 seats to treat addictions in that community. And I spent time at that camp. I spoke to some of the people that participated. It's not just the community at Pine House that goes there to treat and recover. It is all of northern Saskatchewan. They have applications from across the province because for 35 to 40 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that model has worked for them. And we as a government, we were there to contribute to what is working. And that is the people that I represent. That is my family, those are my friends, and those are people that, we see that need help. And it was with tremendous amount of pride that I was there with our Premier, with our Minister of Mental Health, Rural Health, and Addictions to make that announcement. Hear, hear. That day didn't just end there, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We also carried on to Buffalo River First Nation. They were breaking ground for a youth center that we, as a government, were also a part of. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when the chief spoke, there are certain things that she spoke about that stuck with me. She said, in the history of their community, this is the first time a sitting premier has visited their community. And she said it with pride. She said it in a way that was true to what partnership looks like. I policed in Buffalo River Dene Nation before I joined politics. I lived in that community, and I know how hard they work to give the young people a future. And that was what was celebrated that day, was what their future looks like. Just like my youth leadership forum that I attended in Saskatoon, the youth in Dillon are saying the same thing. This is what we want our future to look like. Mr. Speaker, as we continue to invest in northern Saskatchewan, it's important. We also recognize that we need to protect these investments. Northern Saskatchewan communities have developed strong partnerships with industry, and they are positioning themselves to be a strong voice when it comes to the growth and all the potential benefits that comes with. When we talk about the North and the position that we're afforded because of the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, I was in the community at Birch Narrows, and I found out they formed a partnership with an electrical company, and we talked about capacity within the community. And within that discussion, we talked about what education opportunities can we present so people can take advantage of these opportunities, local residents. So January coming, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Buffalo Narrows with Northlands College and all its partners will be offering an electrical program so people from northern Saskatchewan can take this program at home. That is what growth looks like. And in order for us to protect that, we have to be invested, we have to show up, and we have to listen. In my visits to northern Saskatchewan, I visited far north communities. And in one of my visits, when I got into Wollaston, the chief there acknowledged and talked about their representation, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The chief thanked me for showing up because sometimes their representative is not there for them. And that is one thing that I will be very proud of, Mr. Speaker, that I recently took an inventory of my visits into Northern Saskatchewan and not my engagements in the province. But in Northern Saskatchewan, I would say I committed 86 days into the North.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
What that means, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that I'm showing up, I'm listening, and
getting things done.
Making a difference. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a throne speech that I'm out in the restaurant and people come up to me and say, that was a good throne speech. These are Saskatchewan people saying that. And we give them tremendous amount of hope because for the longest time, that's what this province was about. We are a province that have welcomed over 186 different countries. And when the day that I spent with the youth, my goodness, when they heard that, the pride that they had. We owe it to the young people, we owe it to our future, that our language, what we say and how we say it, is not damaging their hope.
Hear, hear, hear.
And what I hear, what I've listened, and what I feel, sometimes our young people are not getting that message. This is not the darkest days of Saskatchewan. If anything, this is the brightest days of Saskatchewan.
Hear, hear.
With our strong partnerships, and before I wrap up, I've spoken many times here, and I've thanked my family, I thank my wife and kids and my grandkids, but there's somebody that I always left out, and I don't know why, is my constituency assistant, Beau Fourquet. And then there's somebody else that I want to quickly acknowledge. But to Beau, sometimes looking after me is challenging, my expectation is high, but we make it work. And I wanted to say thank you. The people of Athabasca are well served by you. And I am grateful that you're able to be there and to guide me and to keep my schedule and calendar manageable. So for that, thank you. But on a side note, I spoke at Buckingham, Minister, I almost slipped. Westview. Saskatoon, Westview. Thank you. You know, when that was happening to Blake, I was like, oh my God, how did that happen? And look at me here. So, yes. Right? Oh my God, I did it again. Anyways, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I spoke at his event, and there was numerous MLAs there. I acknowledge all of the MLAs in the room, except the main person of why I was there, and he was the one who invited me. So I want to personally acknowledge MLA from Saskatoon, Westview. And he is a friend, he is a mentor, and he guides me, and he's one of those persons that when you sit down, he will tell you how things are. And sometimes that is in a form that you have to, he very politely tells you, either you have to step it up or step back. And I think that is the kind of guidance that somebody new to this I really appreciate. So I want to say thank you to you for that. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Doon zinig a mercy nastensa. Dant udani hati yun, dant udanits idniuli, sayatirok epatorin daru, dant udanits idniuli, ayi hati yia, ni that's a mercy nastensa. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the member from Carrot River Valley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this is This is going to be my last reply to a throne speech, and I've been around for quite some time, and truthfully, I'm getting a little long in the tooth. Not near as long as our member from Saskatoon Eastview, but I am getting up there. So, you know, it's going to make me sad to not be here to do throne speeches anymore, Mr. Speaker. But I'll tell you what, it's going to make a lot of other people probably really happy, especially on our side of the House. Mr. Speaker, it's really been a pleasure and an honor, an absolute honor to serve for as many years as I have, to be able to go out and do this wonderful job. And I want to thank the good people of Carrot River Valley for letting me do this for as long as I have. And you know, there's always been various different things going on, and as we all know, you're never going to make everybody happy, but I think I've seen a lot of growth in the constituency of Carrot River Valley, and truthfully, that's what this whole throne speech is about. It's to build and to protect what we already have. And so I also want to thank my CAs, Cindy and Shelley, who've been with me for years now, especially Shelley. I think it's something like, she's close to 25 years of being a constituency assistant. And, you know, they've done just a wonderful job on keeping me on track, basically. And, you know, also I want to thank my wife, Terry. You know, I'm gone lots, as we all know, in the House. You know, you're gone a lot from home, and you don't get into a whole pile of family activities. And, Mr. Speaker, that's something that is challenging for all members. And it doesn't matter which side of the House you're on. It is a challenge, especially when I'm 400 clicks away from Regina. Mr. Speaker, but the other things I've seen is, you know, we're on our second premier. We had Brad Wall before, and now our premier that we have now. Boy, I'm telling you, those people really do a great job of managing what's going on in this province. Mr. Speaker, I've seen so many changes since 2007, since I was elected. You know, I've seen a change in the attitude in Saskatchewan. Big changes. People in Saskatchewan are positive people. They see a growing province, they see a growing economy. You know, things are going along well. We're a little tough right now, like, I mean, let's face it. You know, there are problems. A lot of them are caused not by us. It's problems that actually are worldwide. But we're trying to keep everything on track within here, and like I said, I think that we have the team on this side of the House to be able to be able to do that. And like I said, working with a fantastic bunch of people that just, you know, I've been here for quite a while, but it's really made my life a lot easier. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to get into some of our build and protect, and you know, there's been a lot of things mentioned about education. Mr. Speaker, just take a look at what has happened since 2007. 60 new schools built in this province. 60. And just in my particular area, although Porcupine Plain isn't in my constituency, but it's right close. You know, there's a new school in Porcupine Plain, new school in Hudson Bay, new school just about done in Carrot River. I actually just talked about it the other day. Oh, and Mr. Speaker, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our football team, the Wildcats. I was at the game on the quarterfinals on Saturday, and they absolutely blew away Robert, 36-34. I know the member from Robert would be a little disappointed in that. However, needless to say, it was a very good game. But you take a look at what we've had going on with our schools. Now, let's go back to the NDPs, right? Remember 2007? How many schools did the NDP build in 2007? Zero. Zero schools in 2007. Let's just take a look at what's happening even this year. This year, we have a new Francophone school in Regina coming up. We have St. France Cree Bilingual School in Saskatoon, kindergarten to grade 12 school in Lanigan, Joint Use School in Moose Jaw, elementary school in La Loche, Regina North Joint Use School, Saskatoon's City Centre School, and Harbour Landing West Joint Use School in Regina. Mr. Speaker?
17 in progress.
Yeah, and I think there's how many? 17 in progress going on. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that is committed to putting money into schools. And to top it all off, we also have our, and I can't remember the acronym for it, but for fixing schools, I remember it happened in Melfort. It used to be, if you wanted to do some major work in a school, you had to apply to the government to get a grant. Of course, you had to go through all the bureaucratic process. Now, the school divisions actually have that money, and a good example was in the Melfort School when the boilers went. And they could just go and fix those boilers with the money that was already there. They didn't have to go to the government to try and get more money to be able to do it. These BMR. And Mr. Speaker, these are things, what we've been doing with education, like we've increased the funding. We're working on the education end of it. And, you know, the other thing that we're working on too, it's, just give me a second here, Mr. Speaker. According to Greg, I don't. You know, let's talk about our health system. Now, I know that the opposition always likes to complain about our health system, but you know, they seem to forget that about all the hospitals that they shut down. They didn't just shut down schools, they shut down hospitals too. And I have mentioned it before, you know, they shut down the hospital in Arborfield and they said, well, you're not very far from Carrot River, so you can just go to the hospital there. Of course, then they shut the hospital down in Carrot River. And they said, well, you know, you're not very far up in Nipawin, so you can go over there. Well, I guarantee you, had the NDP stayed in power, probably the one would have been shut down in Nipawin, and they would have said, well, you can go to Prince Albert or wherever, which reminds me, we are building a new hospital in Prince Albert, which is going to be great for us. And the member from Regina, Elphinstone Centre, mentioned the other day, well, these hospitals, you know, they are all just turned into various different other government things. I can't remember exactly how she said it, but it sounded like they were all turned into wellness centers or be whatever. Well, they plowed down the hospital in Arborfield. The hospital in Carrot River was purchased by the town and the RM and made into a personal care home. Those are just two in my area. No, they weren't turned into wellness centers or anything, Mr. Speaker. They were, yeah, and Plains Hospital is another good example. Mr. Speaker, we have built long-term care homes throughout the province where I think it was 1,200 beds that the NDP shut down when they were in power. And we have been building long-term care beds, and one again in my constituency, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to have to get rolling here. But these things we want to build and protect. We got 1,000 more docs, 5,000 more nurses than what we did in 2007. We're also getting capital investment coming into Saskatchewan. This is what we want to do. We want to build and we want to protect those investments that are coming in. $13.2 billion in investments alone in 2023. You know, we've got trade offices opened up because we can't count on anybody else like our federal government, to be able to go out and help us get stuff going throughout the world, because we are an exporting province. We got trade offices in Vietnam, United Kingdom, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Mexico, Germany, India, Japan, and China. These are things that we are doing to be able to move Saskatchewan forward. And Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about a few of the investments in Carrot River Valley. These are investments that we want to protect. We have lumber is a very important sector in our area. We want to be protecting them. We have Carrot River investments, we have Dunkley Lumber, we have a new school, Premier Horticulture, Ag Vision Seeds, Hudson Bay, we have a new school, Weyerhaeuser Strand Board. We just put money into their new pool, a lift station. Arborfield, we've got CanPro Ingredients, new water treatment plant. Nipawin, we have Bungay Canola Crushing Plant, tourism. Tobin Lake is there also. And we have decommissioning old landfill site. Over in Tisdale, regional landfill site. We got C. Merrick processing plant. I've talked about that in the ledge here before, where they're taking fava beans and making protein out of it and gluten-free flour, which is going to be going over to Europe and on the gluten-free end of it. And also Tisdale is a green catchment area for the Northeast. They're also building a new industrial park. There is exploratory drilling going on in the whole area, looking for the possibility of lithium and oil shale development. We have the short line railways. The NDP never thought about putting any money into the short line railways. This government is doing it. We have Thunder Rail in Arborfield and Torch River Rail over in Nipawin. Of course, agriculture is huge in the area, and what I believe some of the most progressive and the best farmers in the world. You know, as I go through all these things that are going on in Carrot River Valley, you will notice that they're all dependent on fossil fuels. The stuff that the NDP, Liberal NDP coalition are set on eliminating. The carbon tax that these goofballs are putting forward is destroying not only the industry in Carrot River Valley, but all of Canada. We have the most environmentally sound policies in the world, and yet the Liberal NDP federal government, in their egotistically mind-boggling ways, want to shut it down. Their federal clean electricity standards and net zero emissions target are unrealistic and unaffordable. That's why we have the Saskatchewan First Act, so we can build and protect. And I thank our Premier for standing up to the federal government and saying, this is impossible and we can't do it. I find it amazing that Justin, backed by the NDP, believes that there just isn't a business case for exporting our environmentally sustained products around the world, therefore improving the quality of life for all of Canada. Wouldn't it be nice if the NDP right here in Saskatchewan said to their federal leader, enough already, quit backing up Justin and his detrimental policies that will drive Canada, and especially Western Canada, into being a third world country. Just do it. Just right, Jagmeet, and let him know on how things are how you're actually ruining things out here in Western Canada. Mr. Speaker, like I said, I've been so proud to be a member of this team. You know, when I first got into government, the old story, you want to leave things better than what it was when you went in. Now, what has happened since I've been here in 2007? Like I said before, I have seen Saskatchewan moving forward, and these things are helping our whole province. Now, I wanted to be a portion of that. And like I said, that's why I got into politics. And it's happened. And it's not just me. Like, I'm just a small cog in the wheel. It's been the team that I've been working with that have helped move this province forward. We want to keep this province moving forward. We want to keep on building in this province. and we definitely want to protect what we have in this province. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will close my last speech from the throne.
I recognize the member from Saskatoon Eastview.
That's the real member from Saskatoon Eastview. The member's opposite. I've been mistaken for the member from Saskatoon Southeast a couple times in the last couple of days, and believe me, that's enjoyable, I think, on both sides when that happens. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm honored to rise again and present my response to the throne speech. And as many of us do, I'll start with just reflecting a little bit on those folks who support me behind the scenes. And, you know, before I get into thanking my family, I just want to make a comment on, and genuinely, how much I enjoy hearing members in this Assembly reflect on their own family members.
Hear, hear.
And what that means to them. There's a lot that goes on in here, but that's my favorite part. We've got this incredible province that really functions like in so many ways, like a really big small town. And it just so happens that in the course of whether it be teaching or coaching or you know, raising a family in my community or just being involved in my city, and now as an MLA, that I've had the honor of getting to know many family members represented by members opposite. And it's always really neat when I get to hear them introduce maybe their loved ones sitting up in the galleries. You know, I think of the Minister of Justice when I get to see her introduce her children. I think, hey, that's a really neat kid that I've got to know, and it's neat to see him be recognized here by his mother. Maybe the new member from Lumsden Morris, the opportunity to meet his daughter as well. Really amazing person. I could go on and on with some of the members opposite, being able to meet their family members in this wonderful province of ours, see the ways that they're contributing, and it's really my favorite part of what we do in these responses, hearing them recognize the way that their family members contribute and serve this province as well. So I just want to make sure members opposite hear me say that in a very genuine way, how much I appreciate that tradition here when we're responding often to throne speeches and budgets to talk about our families. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've got an incredible family supporting me, so I do want to take this opportunity to thank my wife, Emma, who's balancing so much right now with 3 kids at home. She's balancing 2 jobs, 3 children, 2 dogs, and a cat. And we've got a lot going on in the Love household. It's a bit of organized chaos, maybe disorganized sometimes, and she does it all. She's such an amazing human being that I'm so fortunate to have her as my person. You know, to have found that person that I really believe that we're just meant for each other. And what we always fall back on as a couple is acknowledging that we love each other and we like each other. And not only is she my partner in life, she's my best friend. And you know, I've been missing her a lot lately as I haven't been spending as much time at home over the last few weeks as I would have liked. But I know that she believes in the work that I do, and I thank her for that support. And I want to thank her from the bottom of my heart for everything that she's doing over this last month to care for our family and to pick up so much of the work that isn't getting done when I'm not there. She's balancing a lot, and she's just the most beautiful, wonderful person that I know, and I want to thank her for everything that she's doing. I also want to recognize, a little applause for my wife, Emma. She deserves it. I also want to recognize my mom, who came to visit a few weeks back. My wife Emma, her grandmother passed away, and we knew that it was coming. Vel Sawatsky, just a bright light of a human being, just a wonderful great-grandmother to my kids, reached the end of her life. And she passed surrounded by her children, by loved ones. And my wife made a call to my mom, who lives in Kelowna, and she said, "We need help." And within 24 hours, my mom, Jody, was on a plane, and she came to Saskatoon. She stayed for 2 weeks to help us get through the emergency sitting, losing a loved one. And I just want to say to my mom how much that meant to us to have her drop everything, get on a plane, and come here to help us out. I'm so fortunate to have learned everything that I know about parenting from one of the best moms, and I've said before in the assembly, somebody who raised 3 boys as a single parent, predominantly on her own. Just so fortunate to have her in my life and to have her as Nano Joe to my 3 kids.
Here, here.
And speaking of my 3 kids, I also appreciate from members opposite, I see a number of them who always ask, how are your kids doing? And I really value that in this assembly. There's lots we don't agree on, but when we check in on each other, and I love taking questions about my kids because I'm just so darn proud of them.
Here, here.
So to update the assembly, so you can still ask, but I know that I get lots of questions, and I repeat the same lines. My kids are great. My daughter Etta is 16. She's headed to Mexico in a few weeks for World Junior Weightlifting Championships, so she'll be representing our country. She will be, thank you, she'll be one of the youngest competitors there. So junior and weightlifting goes up to age 21. She's going as a 16-year-old. But she's going there having just a couple weeks ago set the new Canadian junior record. In the clean and jerk a few weeks back at a competition in Saskatoon, she clean and jerked 134 kilos.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any guesses on how many pounds that is for those?
300?
295 pounds. 295 pounds, a 16-year-old girl.
Wow.
New Canadian junior record. Again, she's 16 and junior goes up to 21. So she's headed to Mexico in a few weeks. I'm so proud of her, not just for what she can do, but for how she approaches her sport and what that means in her life as a young woman who just really has taken to the sport of weightlifting out of a belief that women can be a powerful force too. And in a province where we have yet to have a woman as premier, although I think one's coming very soon.
Here, here.
I know that at the root of my daughter's love of weightlifting is that belief in female empowerment. My son Tom is 10 years old. He's in grade 5. He's doing great. I'm going to boast about him a little bit too. I help coach his flag football team. And in flag, you kind of play all positions, but he ends up playing a lot of quarterback. And in this season, I'm really excited. Stats are not everything for, 10-year-old flag football. 16 touchdown passes, 1 interception. Wow. Those are phenomenal numbers at any level of football. Here, here. And he had a great season with our Chargers team. And most importantly, he's just having loads of fun, being active, making friends, becoming a better person through sport. And it's just so great to see him develop as just a wonderful young man as he competes and builds friendships and all those great things that sport allows us to do. My youngest Miles, he's 6 years old and he is in grade 1 and he's having just a great year. He loves going to school. He loves his teacher and his classmates, and I'd like to read a short poem that he wrote in school this year. I'm just bringing it up. I should have had it memorized, but Miles wrote a short poem in school in grade 1 called Grateful. So this is Grateful by Miles Love. I am grateful for my family. I am grateful for my house. I am grateful for my big brother, Tom. I'm so fortunate to be a dad to these 3 kids. And again, I want to end this part of my response by letting all members know how much I enjoy hearing about each other's families and how they inspire us to do what we do here in this assembly, in our constituency offices all around the province. I know that all of us find inspiration in our loved ones. I also want to thank my constituency assistants, and I've got a bit of a team effort happening in Eastview. For much of the last year, I've been served by Betty Martin, who came in to fill a mat leave and just did an amazing job, and she's still there casually when we need someone to fill in. Betty's a bit of a neighbor. She lives a couple blocks away. She served our province as an EA in the classroom for decades, and she came to work with me in my office. We actually worked in the classroom together about 10 years ago. And she just did such a great job. She had this group of regulars who would come by our office in Market Mall. Regular kind of mall folks would come by for weekly meetings just to stay in touch with Betty, to let her know what they're thinking, what they're concerned about. And it was just, she was just such a great person to have there as that first person you see and first voice you hear when you contact her office. But I'm also very fortunate that Katie's come back to join full-time following mat leave. She had her first child, and it's so wonderful to see her exploring the joys of being a new parent and having Alexander come by the office. Sometimes just a wonderful little guy. Katie is just incredibly competent at her job. She's a gifted writer, gifted with people skills. She's incredibly well educated with a master's degree in community economic development, and she's just a rock star of a constituency assistant. I've also got Judy there, typically on Fridays, and Judy has worked in a number of NDP constituency offices for decades. And her institutional knowledge is amazing, and the fact that I get to have her just for 1 day a week is an incredible gift. And I've also got Kathleen and Ty, who helped me out a lot throughout the warm months, although it appears we might be past that now. And these 2 individuals helped us with a lot of outreach. So we did a lot of events in seniors' residences at St. Vladimir's or St. Anne's, as well as getting out, hosting events in the mall, and getting out door knocking, checking in with constituents, handing out newsletters, talking to folks about things that matter, and they've helped to feed that information back into my office to make sure that I'm connected with my constituents in a genuine way, getting that feedback straight from them. So this team is just remarkable. I'm so thankful for them. I also want to take a minute to thank and recognize we've had a couple of birthdays in our caucus office recently, so I want to send a shout out and a happy birthday to Cheryl Stesick and Warren McCall. Get younger and looking younger and feeling younger every year that they work in this building, which is remarkable because I think it's on the opposite to me. But they're just amazing folks who serve our team so well in their capacities in our caucus office.
Here. Opposite for the other guy, though.
Oh, and I also need to mention, I missed one thing talking about my kids, and they'll be upset if I don't mention. I've got 3 children who are all Swifties. I don't know if anyone else has any Swifties at home in their household, big fans of Taylor Swift. And I am proudly wearing my friendship bracelet in the assembly today. If you know what a friendship bracelet is, then maybe you're going to go check out the Eras tour in a theater near you someday soon. So they would be upset if I didn't mention that I've worn that every day here during this sitting. I'll move on here to reflecting a little bit on the speech from the throne, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I'm going to start because often we hear this from the other side, we're so negative, why can't you talk about good things? And I'll talk about a couple things that I think that this throne speech got right. At least I hope to see where this government goes. A couple things that I thought were positives. The first one was the change to vaping and smoking, to move that to age 19.
You're here.
I think it's a good move. Happy to see it. I want to congratulate the youth who came to their legislature through the Youth for Change movement supported by Lung Saskatchewan.
You're here.
I think that's really important. I hear some, that's great. We're agreeing so much in this assembly today. It's almost, it's going to confuse folks. So I want to congratulate those youth because I've always been, I kind of made a career as an educator on promoting and advocating for youth voice in our society. Young people have a lot to say about what kind of province they want to live in and what we can do in this assembly to support their vision for the future. This is vitally important, and while I congratulate the youth for speaking up, for organizing, I also want to congratulate the government for listening. But here's the but, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Why not always engage youth on matters that pertain to their health, their well-being, their education? 2 weeks ago, we had an emergency sitting on a matter that is vitally important to young people. In fact, we had young people come and join us and sit in the gallery and watch those proceedings. 40 hours of debate, 98% of which was engaged only by members of one side on an issue that pertains to the mental health and the well-being of a minority of vulnerable youth. This government has shown that they're willing to engage with youth on issues that matter to them when they want to. So the question is, why don't they want to engage with youth on matters that we engage with in that special sitting? These are vulnerable youth who are made vulnerable through a lack of mental health services available in our schools, youth who are made vulnerable by a lack of services available in our health systems, youth who are made vulnerable by a government that refuses to listen to them. So while I celebrate and I acknowledge success in this throne speech of listening to youth for the Youth for Change movement and Lung Saskatchewan and changing the vaping age, I say shame for not listening to those trans, gender diverse, and ally youth who are here to speak up for their rights, their mental health, and their well-being in this same assembly.
That's right here.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also want to talk about the good step to see changes to workers' compensation coverage for the 6 presumptive cancers that firefighters face due to the toxic elements they're exposed to through their jobs. I think that this is an important move, something that we've long supported firefighters in their advocacy for. And you know, I think that firefighters, they already do everything that they can to reduce risk. They've changed their own safety protocol following a fire where they're exposed to these elements. They've taken every step that they can to reduce those risks, but they need the support of a government for when these cancers do happen, that they're included. I'm glad to see that Saskatchewan is now a leader in this regard. And again, I think I want to congratulate firefighters for their advocacy, their unrelenting advocacy to have these cancers recognized through workers' compensation, because they certainly do face risks in their heroic efforts to keep our citizens safe. Now, where did the throne speech miss? Well, it missed on a number of areas, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It missed on the cost of living. And the word affordability only appeared one time, I believe, in the throne speech. And there was nothing here to provide immediate relief to those feeling the pinch most. We heard today during question period about the 50% rise in food bank usage under this Premier's watch. There was nothing in this throne speech to address that crisis. We hear about children going to school hungry and the barrier that creates in their learning and their growth and development, and there's nothing in this throne speech to address that crisis. We hear about seniors going back to the workforce because they can't afford rent, medications, food, and utilities, and there was nothing in this throne speech to address that crisis. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we heard another area that was missing here was so many of the ongoing crises in healthcare completely unaddressed in this throne speech. On the same day of the throne speech, we had the member from Saskatoon Centre wait for an hour and a half for an ambulance that never showed up. And there was nothing in the throne speech to address the challenges faced by those providing ambulance care in Saskatchewan. On the same day of the throne speech, we had nurses rally on the steps of the legislature for the first time in 24 years, calling for a nursing task force, calling for their voices to be heard, calling for something, anything, to retain those experienced healthcare workers that are leaving the job and leaving our province, but there was nothing in this throne speech to support that crisis. On the same day of this throne speech that was touted to support housing and affordability, we had a number of citizens from Regina here to raise awareness of their loved ones who are being kicked out of their homes.
That's right.
A throne speech about affordability and housing, and yet residents are here to say our loved ones are losing their homes and they can't afford anywhere else to go. Those are the realities, and this throne speech did nothing to address those challenges. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd be remiss if I didn't spend just a minute as I wrap up to talk about failures in education. There was nothing new in this throne speech to address those issues that, yes, parents, yes, teachers, thousands of which rallied in front of that minister's office. The member from Saskatoon, Silver Spring Sutherland, on the weekend. Nothing to recognize their concerns. Crowded classrooms, complex classrooms, students with complex needs going unmet because our school divisions have been cut down to the bone. The supports that our young students need in the area of intensive supports for learning. All of these new students who are coming into our schools from other parts of the world who just need a little bit extra help to ensure that they're able to learn the English language when they get to school. And of course, the mental health needs of our students, which has been recognized time and time again when meaningful consultation does take place. Those are the concerns that come up. And this government has failed to even mention them and address them meaningfully in this speech from the throne. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for those reasons and so many others that I haven't the time to get into today, unless I speak for another 7 hours or so, I will conclude my speech here. This, and I'm not going to do it. You're all lucky.
Let's go.
I'm going to conclude my response to the throne speech now and say that I will be supporting the amendment put forward by my esteemed and eloquent colleague from Regina Elphinstone Centre, and I will not be supporting the motion put forward by the government on the throne speech. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the member from Saskatoon Willowgrove.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. I hope I can meet your expectations. It is, well, yes, exactly. Well, can't say I haven't had practice. This is my 20th time responding to a speech from the throne. It was 2003 when I first took my spot in the legislature, and make no mistake about it, Mr. Speaker, the province was a different place. This member was a little bit different back then as well, but like I say, still got the fire in the belly, still excited to be here, and the honour is never lost, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But indeed, it's always an honour to reply to the speech from the throne. My first four were when I was in opposition, so I got a little bit of a feeling for what the members opposite are going through, but the most exciting ones have been from 2007 on, as we have been very bold in growing this province. Like members opposite and members throughout, I want to talk a little bit about my family and a little bit about my loved ones and those that helped me to get here and to stay here. My wife, Trish, she's working currently at St. Paul's Hospital. She's a major gifts officer there. She's very much enjoying her career. I'm a little biased, but I think she's very good at what she does. And all members know about hospital foundations in our province, and in fact, Trish and her colleagues have been here to put on a seminar for us and host a host a reception and talk about the 32 foundations in Saskatchewan, and they raise $150 million. So it's wonderful. She's very proud of St. Paul's Hospital. Right now, St. Paul's is undergoing a new entrance and with funding from the Ministry of Health and the SHA, and she's certainly, it's Saskatoon's oldest hospital, and it's the hospital that I was born in, and I know the member for Saskatoon-Riversdale mentioned it in his speech as well, that he was born there. So me maybe a little bit earlier than he, but in the same place. And I want to talk about my kids, Carter and Paige. Son Carter is working for Mallard Wealth Management in Saskatoon. He's a financial planner and very much enjoying his work, and he loves Saskatoon and he loves Saskatchewan. He and his girlfriend, they bought a house. She recently became a nurse, and so they're like one of the average successful young families that have decided to make Saskatchewan their home and are contributing to their economy and getting involved in their community. They're both part of SIPE, Saskatchewan Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, a great organization, and I know they've met many friends as well. My daughter Paige, on the other hand, she's in Hamilton, Ontario, at the McMaster University. She's pursuing a master's degree. She's trying to get into medicine. It hasn't worked yet, but she's pursuing her career, and nevertheless, and she's enjoying the big city, enjoying Hamilton and Toronto, and you know, she finished up on her swimming career, spending 5 years with McMaster Marauders and swimming at the post-secondary level, something that she started with the Saskatoon Goldfins and continued on till now. She's also enjoying the arts and the culture scene and the Mirvish Theatre and things like that. And yeah, she's a Swiftie as well. She's, you know, when the tickets came, she said, "Dad, you got to register. You got to do this. You got to do that." So I crossed my fingers, but I wasn't successful. But one of her friends was, and so they're getting all excited about November of 2024. We're getting excited about October of 2024. She's getting excited. So she picks me up at the airport and she says, "Dad, I just want to warn you, you got to drive aggressively when you're in Ontario." And so she gets on the 401 and floors it, and I hang on for dear life. But I get a little worried about her coming home because there's a boyfriend in the picture now. So yeah, Kevin, he's there, and yeah, who knows? Nice guy. So we'll see where that goes. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I remember my first speech from the throne, and not the reply, but when the Lieutenant Governor Linda Haverstock gave her speech, she certainly, my kids were 3 and 5 years old, and they were sitting here and they did a little wave, and the Lieutenant Governor said that's the first time she saw somebody do a wave at the speech from the throne, but they certainly enjoyed their time here. But again, that was 20 years ago, and I want to talk a little bit about my constituency, about this constituency of Saskatoon, Willow Grove. Not my constituency, but the constituency that I represent, and it's such an exciting constituency to represent. Every week I go home and I drive by the communities and the areas, and Brighton specifically is right on my way home, and I see new houses. I see what represents new people moving into Saskatoon and moving into our province. A large percentage of the growth that happens in our city and our province does happen in the constituency I represent. Areas like Evergreen and Aspen Ridge, Willow Grove, Arundel, Arbor Creek, Brighton, East College Park, and Briarwood. And I have the opportunity and the privilege to represent them. There's going to be substantial changes with redistribution because of the growth that has taken place, but nevertheless, I am their MLA for another year. And as I represent them, I want to thank my constituency assistant, Brianne Tupin, who is the friendly voice that answers the phone and does a great job helping constituents from our constituency or wherever they happen to call from in the province. And I want to thank her for the work that she does. And my communications assistant, Jackie Claybeck, she runs my newsletter and does a lot of my communications work. I've got 10,000 people on my newsletter called Provincial Point of View, and certainly it's a great way to communicate with constituents and others. And you know, some of the major important things going on in the constituency right now with all the growth that's taken place, the need for a new high school. And we've been working on that for a number of years now. Community associations have been involved. I've been trying to coordinate things with the City of Saskatoon and the Mayor, and we're looking at a joint use facility, 2 schools, and a civic aquatic facility as well for what is the fastest growing area in Saskatoon, certainly, and the province. It's a #1 priority on the education before list, and I know that we'll be working hard on it, and I actually just spoke to the Minister of Education earlier today about it, and I'm very encouraged about the work that's being done, and knowing that it'll be a very exciting year in 2024 for Brighton and Holmwood and all the areas in my constituency. Not only are there new homes, Mr. Speaker, in the constituency of Saskatoon-Willow Grove, but new businesses. In fact, just on Saturday, the member for Saskatoon Westview and I had the opportunity to open a brand new restaurant, a brand new business, Thai Express. Congratulations to Kapil and Dipanjan on their 4th location of Thai Express. There's a couple more coming. I see some Thai fans here, and of course I wasn't lost on the opportunity to take some of that food home. I was going home to watch the University of Saskatchewan Huskies football game here, and we had some great Thai food. And again, we're just so excited about the many new comers to our constituency and our province, the many new entrepreneurs. And these are new Canadians that hit the ground running and are great entrepreneurs as well. Many exciting things are happening in Saskatoon and Saskatoon-Willow Grove. I mentioned the Huskies. They're off to Alberta to play in the playoffs, and the Hilltops as well had a great weekend where they welcomed the Windsor St. Clair group, and they taught them how to play football in Saskatchewan in October in the snow. It was 43-0 for the Hilltops. So we welcome them and thank them for coming. And now the Hilltops are off to Victoria to play in the Canadian Championships. Lots of action happens in my constituency at the Merlis Belcher Centre. Merlis is a resident of Saskatoon-Willow Grove, a neighbour of mine, a wonderful philanthropist for the city and the province, and makes us so proud. We talk about building and protecting in the speech from the throne. We have to certainly protect what we've built in the province. Since 2007, we're very proud of the Children's Hospital and the many, many new hospitals around the province. New schools in Willow Grove and Evergreen, and every part of the constituency has been touched by the growth that's taking place. As a government, I understand we have built 186 different facilities, whether they be hospitals or long-term care homes or schools and other facilities, 186. More than 200,000 people have been welcomed since 2007 to become Saskatchewan residents. 30,000 in the last year. We certainly build on things. We build, and I think the most important thing that we've built since 2007 is our confidence and our pride. And Premier Wall made sure that we felt that and did that, and our current Premier stresses that we must be leaders in the nation. And certainly the example today, he very, very quickly responded to what was an embarrassing statement by a federal cabinet minister on the weekend, and he took the lead. 11 o'clock this morning, he was communicating with people across the province, and I give the opposition credit for what they did today and in supporting our Premier. But again, he's often the first to take the lead on a national basis and make sure that he and Saskatchewan are leaders as well. So I'm very, very proud of that, and very, very proud to be part of a government led by him. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to talk about the growth and the reinvestment. Since 2007, we've invested $66 billion in capital facilities. And, of the 60 new schools, I had a chance to be at the Blaine Lake School opening earlier on. And a lot of you have heard me talk about the Blaine Lake School, but the Premier and the Minister of Education were there, and they let me be the MC, being a former student at that school. And I was just so proud to to be there because our government was replacing a school in a small town, and just very, very proud of what signal that sends to small towns across Saskatchewan, that we value their growth and they value their contributions. And you know, when I compare it, and I often don't get too political, but you compare it to what the NDP did when I was in opposition here, 2003 to 2007, they closed one school per month. They were in government for 176 months, and they closed 176 schools, Mr. Speaker. And that's as political as I'll get. I'll let people make their own judgments, but every time I get an opportunity to compare our record to your record, I take that opportunity. 35 major health projects here undergoing right now, 20,000 kilometers of highway, 193 million in capital investments in parks. I was honored to serve in that capacity, and I know the current minister loves to serve in there as well. $780 million post-secondary infrastructure. It was an honor to attend the Sask Poly announcement last month and to be part of the vision showing for post-secondary education. And the University of Saskatchewan was there, and many members of our government and previous governments as well were there to join in the celebration. And we look forward to what Sask Poly is going to bring to Saskatoon and our province as well. $22 billion in Crown Corporation capital, which is just astounding as well. Mr. Speaker, $739 billion invested in Saskatchewan residents through the Graduate Retention Program. 81,000 post-secondary graduates have taken advantage of it. No wonder our province is growing. No wonder Saskatchewan is the place to be. And you know, we see thousands of additional doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, and hundreds of more teachers. All the while, families are paying less provincial taxes than they did in 2007. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's something to be very, very proud of. And we're not done yet. You look at our growth plan and where we're at, private capital, $13.2 billion with a goal of $16 billion by 2030. Agri-food exports, $18.2 billion. Our goal is $20 billion by 2030. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we've said it before and we say it many times, we have what the world needs in this province: food and fertilizer and fuel. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we build and protect our export markets, Saskatchewan trade offices in 9 countries: Vietnam, UK, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Mexico, Germany, India, Japan, and China, and probably more to come with the trade and the success that we're having. While I'm on the topic of international relations, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to talk about the honour that I had here recently at the end of September and the beginning of October. I had the honour to represent Saskatchewan and Canada at the World Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference in Accra, Ghana, Africa. And I enjoyed the opportunity to join the Speaker and the Clerk of the Legislature. 56 countries were at the World Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference. 188 parliaments were represented, and it was indeed the trip of a lifetime. People were wonderful. The people in Ghana were 2 generations away from being slaves. So you want to talk about them loving their freedom and loving their lot in life and being part of the Commonwealth. It was great to see the people and to learn more and more about the country. I could go on and go on about the trip, but time doesn't permit. But I want to thank the clerk and the speaker and for their guidance and for being part of it. And thank you to the High Commissioner of Canada in Ghana for hosting us and organizing business meetings and making us feel welcome and making introductions as well. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm excited about our new investment attraction strategy, the move to strengthen economic corridors, our new jobs plan to create 100,000 new jobs. It's a great goal, but we must celebrate and protect what we have done. First Nations and Métis employment up 28%, 92%, and this is what I learned at the Sask Poly announcement, 92% of Indigenous graduates of Sask Polytech have employment upon graduation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our economy is strong, but we face global instability, inflation, and high interest rates. One of the biggest threats to Saskatchewan's economy is our own federal government. The federal carbon tax increases the cost of everything we produce, everything we manufacture, everything we transport, and everything we purchase. I couldn't believe, as I mentioned earlier, what the federal minister had to say about the home oil heating debacle. She said that the West would be treated better if they elected more Liberals. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we all know nothing could be farther from the truth. The federal clean electricity standards and net zero emission targets are unrealistic and unaffordable, and as our Premier has indicated, we will not risk plunging our homes, our schools, our hospitals, our care homes, our businesses into the cold and darkness because of the ideological whims of others. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I couldn't agree more. That is why we have the Saskatchewan First Act to defend Saskatchewan's economic potential and provincial economy. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about building strong communities. Actually, there's a lot I want to talk about, but I see that my time is coming to an end. But it's great to see the speech from the throne talk about returning PST in order to promote new home construction. This will see houses continue to be built in Evergreen and Aspen Ridge and Willow Grove and Brighton and other areas. The secondary suite program, that's just a darn right idea. I want to touch on some other areas, 500 new addition treatments spaces, the three pillars: increase capacity to get people the help they need, improve the system to better serve patients, and transition to a recovery-oriented system of care. Other highlights of the throne speech: 155 new supportive housing units, 120 permanent emergency shelters. In 2007, our government inherited a health care system that was decimated by hospital closures, long-term bed closures, declining number of doctors and nurses practicing in Saskatchewan, and the longest surgical wait times in Canada. There are now 1,000 more doctors, 5,000 more nurses practicing in Saskatchewan than 2007. I wish I had the time to go through each and every one of those stats, but I know one of the concerns in my constituency is surgeries and the backlog and trying to get caught up. More than 24,000 surgeries in the first 3 months of 2023, the highest number of surgeries ever performed in a 3-month period in our province. Again, that is something to be very, very proud of. I wanted to get in further talking about protecting communities. The speech from the throne does that. Protecting families, protecting seniors, quadrupling the support for low-income seniors from $90 to $360. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker and colleagues, there are so many opportunities in Saskatchewan. Whether if you have lived here all your life, the speech from the throne says, or you are brand new to the province. More schools, more hospitals, more highways, more work to be done. Mr. Speaker, we must build and protect what has been built since 2007 and continue to build Saskatchewan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the residents of Saskatoon-Willow Grove will accept no less. Thank you for the opportunity to put these remarks on the record. Of course, I will be supporting the government position. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Indian Head Milestone.
Mr. Speaker, I may speak a little quickly. I don't have a lot of time before 5 o'clock, but I do have a number of points I want to get through. I want to start by welcoming the two new members on the opposition side. You've got some big boots to fill with Derek Myers and Mark Doherty have done an excellent job for us. And so good luck to you on that opposition bench for many, many years to come. I would also like to welcome the new member from Lumsden Morris. And what an excellent maiden speech you gave, sir. It was just amazing. And you know, so many people look back, new members will look back at other people's maiden speeches, but that one will be one that I would recommend to any new member to look and talk about your constituency, but talk about yourself and your life and how it got you here. And so congratulations, great job done. I want to, again, quickly thank the people that work in my office. We have had a transition over the last couple months, Mr. Speaker. I think we had, we had a Halloween contest last year, and our office quite easily won it because of the great people that work in my office. So I really am going to miss Max, who's now at TED. I'm going to miss Melissa, who just left the building. Friday was her last day, and she's working in a long-term, in a private care home that she'll be just excellent. Hillary has moved on to highways, I believe, and Andrea, who has worked for 2.5 years, was accepted into nursing school. So we'll be going and not only being a servant here, but eventually being a servant within the healthcare system. And I want to thank them for the past 2.5 years, and in particular thank the new staff that are working in my office. Ryan, who is the Chief of Staff, comes from WestJet, so I know he's a great customer service guy. Will do a great job. Darlene, this is her first day as a senior admin within my office, so I know it's been a long and trying day, and to end it off having to listen to me, I'm not sure that's how she would want to end her day. I want to welcome Austin, who's been with us for a little while, and Brett. So a great office staff that looking forward to bonding with them into the future. I also want to thank the people that work within the ministries that I have the pleasure of working with. Mr. Laurier Dane, who is the Deputy Minister of Government Relations, First Nations Métis Relations, and all those that work under Laurier, just an amazing staff. I can tell you that from my experiences as a minister over a number of different portfolios, we are so well served by our civil servants. You know, whether it's Sheldon Green or there's just so many. I said I wasn't going to mention anybody because then I'd have to mention all of them, and I can't remember them all. But I just want to all the people in government relations for the great work that they do. And now the responsibility from my seatmate, after 13 years of filling one file, government relations and WCB workplace safety. And I'm going to have to try and fill that role. I'm glad I've got him beside me because he can coach me along. But Drew Wilby is now the Deputy Minister, and Drew and I go back quite a long ways from his work as a researcher and on through different roles within government and now into the civil service. And what a great job that he does there. And so thank you to Drew and all those that work with him. I also want to quickly thank my constituency assistant, Nicole. We all talk about our constituency assistants. Nicole has been with me since 2007. I've been very blessed. In the very long time that I've been elected, I've only had 2 constituency assistants. Maybe it's because there were no other jobs out there that they had to stick with me. I don't think that's the case. I think they would have had lots of opportunity to find other places of employment, but I have been very blessed to have Vonnie Wittes for the first 8 years and Nicole for the last 15 or 16 years, and what a great job she does within the constituency office, but more importantly, she's become a good friend and a sounding board and a conduit to what's going on in the constituency. So thank you very much, Nicole. And lastly, I just want to mention my family really quickly. Other members have. I'll just be very quick. Cindy is retired, but nursing part-time at the surgery center. And Craig and Mark are doing their thing. Most people know what they're doing before I know, so there's no use me telling the House what they're doing, because people usually correct me, no, that's not where Mark is right now, or no, that's not where Craig is right now. So thank them. It's kind of interesting as you, as we all get older and we have to kind of start facing the thought of maybe not continuing on doing what you're doing, and that's certainly where Mark is at. He's 29 years old, his body's hurting all the time, and he's just not sure he wants to compete anymore at 29 years old, which is too young. I think he should keep going, but that's not my call. Anyway, I just do want to talk a little bit about the speech from the throne, and then I want to wrap it up on a topic that I've heard quite a bit over the last little while about, let me see, what is the proper word? Tired and out of touch. And I had the opportunity to, and it was maybe not the right setting. You want me to go right there and talk for 10 minutes on that? I think I could, but I feel I should mention a few things in the speech from the throne. But old and tired, and I just kind of went there, and I don't know if it was the right time, but when we had the memorial for Derek Myers, and I just really thought, you know, he really got sick and tired of me talking about numbers, but when I talked about old and tired and how old and tired the NDP were, he just kind of perked up. That's what he wanted to hear. That's what people want to hear, maybe more than... Everybody's done such a great job on reciting the numbers, and honestly, when I look at this speech from the throne, it made me go back to the budget. And the budget was on track, and I think I, at that time, brought up the song, what was the song again? It was, I Hear a Train A-Comin', because we're on the right track. And when I look at this, and I don't want to put this song in your head, but ever since I saw this Build and Protect, all I could think of is Bachman Turner Overdrive, taking care of business. And I thought, that's this, you could make a speech around taking care of business, because that's what this is all about. It's about building, it's about protecting, building what we've built in this province. People have talked about the 60 schools, the 17 that are in the making. They've talked about the hospitals, the long-term care, a new hospital in Prince Albert, and one coming in Weyburn, and the places that we've built throughout the province. And we've done a lot of building, but it is extremely important, and we saw it today, about protecting what we do have in the province. And the reaction of our Premier and our government, and I could just see the joy on the opposition benches as they finally got to vote and win a vote today, Mr. Speaker. Even some of them said yes so quietly it could hardly be heard by Hansard. But they were standing, and after the roll call went by, they sat down, so we took that as a yes. In fact, I think there's a member or two that are sitting in here right now that swore they would never vote for a government motion, but they got the pleasure of doing it today. Mr. Speaker, it was our amendment which passed. It was the amendment that passed. Don't forget that, Mr. Speaker. Well, you guys can hang your hat on that. You can hang your hat on that. Because it was against the carbon tax that you supported every step of the way as it went through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to touch a little bit on what I've been doing over the last little while, and I'm always amazed that when I come in here and I hear our members speak and what they hear within their constituencies, and then I listen to the opposition and hear what they hear in their constituencies, it's a totally different province. It is two different worlds, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to be at the Lang Fall Supper last Saturday night. And if you want to hear people talk about what's real in the world, go to a fowl supper in Lang, Saskatchewan. Because I can tell you, none of your speeches came anywhere close to the conversation that happened up and down that hall for 2 or 3 hours as people from Yellowgrass and Lang and Louvain. No, there wasn't anybody from Louvain. There is nobody from Louvain. They were all in there talking about what was going on in their lives, how the crops were. That's what people were talking about, not the toxicity, the hyperbole of negativity that comes from that side every day of in this House, Mr. Speaker. That was 2 Saturdays ago. This past Saturday, I had the misfortune of going to a funeral. Dave Downton, the guy that I played hockey with, passed away suddenly with a heart attack at age 64. He was with his brother. They'd been to Avonlea to the Nelson dealership and were coming back, and he'd had some heart issues, and he just went to sleep in the truck. It was just an amazing story, and Dave was a great guy. They're good farmers, really good farmers, great ball player, great hockey player, and as what happens, and you know, you play on a senior team in a small town and you lose a member like that, you go to the funeral, but then you meet somewhere else in a watering hole, and that's when the real stories get told about what's going on, but more importantly, what's going on in their lives, what's going on in their families' lives. And none of it came anywhere close to what we hear every day on the opposition benches. Now, I understand that's the people that you're talking. I understand those are the people that you talk to, and those are the stories. I don't think they come across quite the same way as what you're saying them in here. But when I listen to members on this side of the bench, and the member from Athabasca talk about who he spoke to in Athabasca, in the various communities like Dillon, and the Premier had never been to Dillon, That's what people are talking about in this province, not the hyperbole of negativity that comes from your side each and every day, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just in closing, I counted, and I think I got most of them, but during question period, they like to start their questions, tired and out of touch government. That seems to be their call right now. I will say that after the last election, there were 12 brand new members that never sat in this House, 12 members, brand new, and that was the total of your caucus. Talk about tired and out of touch when you got a quarter of our caucus is brand new. That's not tired and out of touch. That's called renewal, Mr. Speaker, and we're not seeing it on that side. But what's even more renewal, Mr. Speaker, is this. Think about this as renewal. Just think about this as renewal. You've got a chief of staff that was elected in 2001, Warren McCall. Like the guy, very good guy. He's new to the NDP. He was elected in 2001, and that's your new chief of staff. What about, they just had a convention, and guess what? They elected a new party president. Judy Bradley, elected in 1991. In fact, she was defeated out of politics when I got into politics, and I'm the old and tired one, Mr. Speaker. Wow! And the classic one just this week, and I will say that when I was the Minister of SaskTel, Ron Stiles was CEO, and some others may not agree with me, but I thought he was a great CEO. I'm questioning my thought right now. If he was so good, why is he where he's at? Ron Stiles started university in 1975. He graduated university in 1980, and he's our new advisor to the NDP. Mr. Speaker, you've got a 1975 university entrance, you've got a 1991 first time elected, a 2001 first time elected, and that's the new and exciting NDP. Bring it on, Mr. Speaker, bring it on. Mr. Speaker, this speech from the throne sets a target for this province that I am proud of, that every member, I think, of this House should be proud of if they didn't let their politics get in the way. Because, Mr. Speaker, building and protecting is exactly what this speech from the throne was, and that's what the motion that we amended, that they all supported as an amended motion, that's what this province is about. We need to stand up for ourselves, we need to protect what we've got in this province, and we need to continue to build what we've built over the past 15 years. Because, Mr. Speaker, I believe that's what people in Lang, Saskatchewan, I believe that's what people from Wilcox at the funeral they're talking about, from Milestone, from Fort Capel, from Indian Head, from Edenwold, from Balgony, from Pilot Butte. Those all happen to be in the constituency of Indian Head Milestone, by the way, which unfortunately is going to be no more. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before, but the new constituency is White City, Capel. Great communities within that constituency, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when I go out and talk to people, and when 40-some members on this side talk to people, we come back in the House and we hear those words in this House. Yeah. And I am so glad that I get to talk to the people in Indian Head Milestone that have a positive outlook, that are really positive about the future, and not have to go and talk to the negativity that those members must hear each and every day because it's reflective in their voices. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am so proud to support this speech from the throne. I've supported many, and I can remember back in the day when I was in opposition, there was lots in speech from the throne that we could talk about that were positive. Never supported one, mind you, and I guess maybe you're going to do the same thing when we're building a long-term care facility in one of your constituencies, when we address so many of the issues that the members opposite complain about each and every day. I think in their heart, I really do believe in the heart, most of them would say it's a pretty good speech from the throne. But when they get whipped because of politics, they have to disagree with it. Mr. Speaker, I'm supporting this speech from the throne, as well as every other member in this House, I'm sure. I'm very proud to support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
now being 5 o'clock, this assembly stands adjourned until 7. Whoop. What? Oh, recess. This assembly recesses to 7 o'clock this evening.